Chapter 1345. Returning the favor, but Gu Yundong understood that the whole family knew that she had woken up and was deliberately putting on an act in front of her. Therefore, when Mrs. Yen asked her to give her the key to Nie Shuang's shop, although she was unwilling, she still gave it to her. In the end, Mrs. Yen couldn't wait to get Mrs. Chen to rent the shop out. She wanted to settle it before Nie Tsong knew. Unexpectedly, as the other owner of the shop, Gu Yundong came to the shop and bumped into him. All right. Gu Yundong had gotten everything she needed to know from Xianxia. She saw that Xianxia was already very tired after saying so much and quickly persuaded her to rest. She only turned around and left after she lay down. Nie Tsong had been outside the whole time. He had actually heard the conversation between Gu Yundong and Xianxia. It was precisely because he understood everything that his expression became even uglier. When he saw Gu Yundong come out, he exhaled slightly. "Thank you for today. If you hadn't told me this, I would have been kept in the dark." She didn't even tell me about what happened in the Yen family. As he spoke, he could not help but laugh bitterly. We're already husband and wife. Gu Yundong did not know what to say. Although they were husband and wife, Xianxia felt extremely insecure. There was no one around her to talk to, so she did not know how to say some things. Gu Yundong said as they walked out, "Take it slow. Sister-in-law married you under those circumstances back then. She was also afraid that she would trouble you and be hated by you. It's normal for her to have such thoughts. I think you're quite close to her. Now that you're in the capital, you should often come to visit. I think she'll become different if she spends more time with you." Gu Yundong's eyes widened. She was very busy. Nie Tsong hurriedly said, "Alternatively, just bring her along wherever you go. Let her see how you do things. Just treat it as doing me a favor, all right?" The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. All right. No matter what, the first person she met when she brought her mother and siblings to the Xuanhe prefecture was Nie Tsong, who had helped their family a lot. Now that he was faced with a difficult problem, Gu Yundong naturally would not reject it. A favor indeed had to be repaid. The two of them walked out of the courtyard and bumped into a nanny on the way. She should be the nanny that Nie Tsong had said he had sent to Xianxia's side. As expected, Nie Tsong introduced, "This is Nanny Chi." Nanny Chi knew Gu Yundong. She was very friendly to Gu Yundong and greeted her with a smile. Then, Nie Tsong told Nanny Chi what had happened in the Yen residence. It was obvious that he trusted Nanny Chi very much. Nanny Chi frowned when she heard this. There was obvious anger on her face. What the Yen residence is doing is still so demeaning. Xianxia is still injured. Please keep her company. Young master, don't worry. I will take good care of young madam. Then, Nanny Chi went to on her garden. Previously, Nanny Chi had always protected Xianxia when she was by her side in the Yen residence. Later on, after Xianxia married into the Nye residence, because of her personality, Nanny Chi was still by her side. She had brought Xianxia to handle family matters, but it had only been a short time. In addition, when they got married, the Nye family was not very satisfied with Xianxia, so Xianxia did not dare to take charge of family matters. This resulted in no progress. Nanny Chi had no choice. Xianxia's personality could not be nurtured overnight. She could only slowly change. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1346. Do you dare to make a move? Gu Yundong and Nie Tsong returned to the hall and asked him, "What are your plans for the Yen residence?" "First we have to clear Xianxia's name. Everybody said that it was her own fault that Cui Lan hit her because of Xianxia's loose tongue. Everybody said that the Yen family had even disobeyed Old Master Yan's orders to save Xianxia, making Yihai and his wife be blamed by Old Master Yan for being unfilial. Everybody said that the Yen family even took out Yenling's dowry to save Xianxia's life. All of this was clearly a conspiracy, but in the end, Xianxia had to carry all of the blame. Why? Was it because they had not tortured her enough in the past? Now that she was no longer in their control, they had changed their method to shackle her? Dream on! She had to expose these lies one by one so that Xianxia would no longer feel uneasy about the Yen residence. It also made all the rumors outside transfer to the Yen residence. Xianxia did not dare to go out now. How could it not be because of these rumors? Except, do you have any ideas? It did not occur to him for a moment. Gu Yundong glanced at him and then at him again. Niet Song felt uncomfortable under her gaze. If you have an idea, just say it. Don't have such an expression. Otherwise, I feel like I'm going to be schemed against. Gu Yundong was speechless. Was her character that bad? Gu Yundong snorted and finally said, I have an idea. I just want to ask you if you dare to blow this matter up. Blow this matter up? Yeah. I dare. Gu Yundong paused. Even if it blows up, it might put sister-in-law in a difficult situation? Isn't she in a difficult enough situation already? Gu Yundong thought about it and felt that it made sense. In fact, if the matter blew up, the Yan family's reputation would be damaged. Although Xianxia might be affected, she was already married to Nie Kong. As long as Niet Song's attitude towards her remained unchanged, the impact would be limited. It was better than being schemed against by her family. The good reputation went to Yihai, Mrs. Yan, and Yanling's family. In the end, she had to bear all the bad reputation and not even have a friend. Tell me first. What's your idea? Gu Yundong exhaled and told him her plan in a low voice. Niet Song nodded as he listened. A moment later, he suddenly clapped his hands. It's feasible. But we still have to rely on sister-in-law for this plan. Tell sister-in-law clearly later and ask her if she agrees. Niet Song said nonchalantly, she will definitely agree. We are doing this for her own good. Gu Yundong. She resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Niet Song, this is the reason why Xianxia didn't tell you about those things. You also said that you're husband and wife. Since you're husband and wife, shouldn't you explain these things clearly? Especially since this is closely related to her. What if you don't explain clearly and she misunderstands? If you don't say anything and she doesn't say anything, are you going to continue being husband and wife? Niet Song was stunned. He thought about it and felt that it made sense. All right, go back and ask sister-in-law first. I'll come back tomorrow. If she agrees, well, carry out the plan. Gu Yundong looked like she was about to leave. If she doesn't agree, well, think about other things. Remember, speak nicely and patiently. Make it clear so that sister-in-law understands that you're helping her vent her anger and make her feel at ease. Niet Song nodded. Got it. You're leaving just like that? Aren't you staying for dinner? No, thank you. Niet Song could only send her out. Unexpectedly, just as she reached the door, she saw someone standing in the corner outside. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1347. The Emperor's gift. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw him and she quickly ran over. Brother Shao, you're back? Yes, I came back in the afternoon. Shao Qingyuan smiled at her, then looked up and nodded at Nie Kong. Long time no see, young Master Nie. Long time no see. I didn't expect the person who was almost arrested and sent to the government office to become Sister Gus' husband. Niet Song still remembered the first time he met him. Shao Qingyuan had been reported as a thief and was captured by 2 constables to the government office. At that time, it should have been the first time Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong met. They were quite fated. At the mention of his dark history, Shao Qingyuan's face stiffened for a moment. However, he quickly returned to normal. He nodded at Nie Kong. Thank you for your help back then, young Master Nie. Haha, sure. Niet Song wanted to invite Shao Qingyuan in, but he was rejected. We still have something to do. Well, visit another day. Niet Song did not force them and watched them leave. Shao Wen led the carriage and stood not far away. The 2 of them chatted as they walked towards the carriage. Brother Shao, how did you know that I was in the Nie residence? Shao Wen said that you went to look at the shop, but I didn't see you when I went to the shop. I asked around and heard that an old woman brought people over to rent out the shop. I guess that you might want to ask Niet Song about the situation, so I came over. Shao Qingyuan spoke to Gu Yundong in a completely different tone than he spoke to Nie Kong. Brother Shao, you're getting smarter and smarter. You taught me well. Have you seen Imperial Physician Song? I happen to have something I need his help with. I saw him. I'll bring you there another day. Okay. Niet Song stood at the entrance and watched as their figures got further and further away. He suddenly felt a heavy blow in his heart. This was the first time he had seen a couple interact like this. Perhaps Gu Yundong was right, to be honest. He took a deep breath, turned around, and strode towards the Anhe garden. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan also got into the carriage. Tong Shui Tao sat on the shaft outside. As soon as the carriage moved, Gu Yundong told Shao Qingyuan everything that had happened in the past 2 days. Shao Qingyuan frowned. Niezong's wife is actually the second daughter of the Yan family? Yeah, I was also shocked when I saw it previously. Then how do you plan to obtain by Muzi? Gu Yundong chuckled. That's why I need Imperial Physician Song's help. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but pinch her nose. He will definitely help. Even if he didn't help, Shao Qingyuan would persuade him until he changed his mind. Gu Yundong asked about his visit to the emperor. Actually, there was nothing special. It was just a report on the vaccination. The emperor was busy every day and didn't have the time to chat with Shao Qingyuan. Moreover, Wenzheng had returned to the capital a few days earlier than them. He had already said what he needed to say. However, before Shao Qingyuan left, the emperor mentioned Gu Yundong and said that he wanted to see her when he had the chance. By the way, the emperor also gave you a gift. A gift? Yes, for our wedding. Gu Yundong was instantly interested. Where is it? At home, of course. Shao Qingyuan saw her looking around and laughed. He couldn't bring it with him. Gu Yundong was a little disappointed. Fortunately, the carriage soon arrived at Hatai Alley. After alighting from the carriage, Gu Yundong could not wait to enter the house to see the gift from the emperor. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1348. Starting today it was a jade ruby. Gu Yundong looked at the 2 centimeters long jade ruby in front of her and the corners of her mouth twitched. Alright, she should have known. How novel could the wedding gift that the emperor had thought of at the last minute be? However, at least this was a reward from the emperor, so the meaning was different. Gu Yundong touched the jade ruby. I'll find a box and keep it properly. I can't lose this. It's fine as long as you make the decision. Shao Qingyuan looked at her excited expression and felt much better. Gu Yundong searched for a long time but could not find a box. In the end, she found one in her spatial storage and pretended to find it in the corner to keep the jade ruby. After putting it away, Gu Yundong asked about Shao Qingyuan and Imperial Physician Song. Has he left the palace? He left the palace. He came out with me this afternoon. Song Dejiang had been in the palace for the past 2 days because the empress had fallen ill and could not recover. Now that she had finally recovered, Song Dejiang was also exhausted. This was how it was to treat the nobles in the palace. It was not easy to be an imperial physician. Gu Yundong sympathized with Song Dejiang, so her original plan to visit him tomorrow morning was changed to this afternoon. The next morning, Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan went to the Nye residence first. He wondered how Niezong and Yenya were doing. When the 2 of them entered the Nye residence this time, the gatekeeper let them in directly. When Gu Yundong saw Yenya again, she realized that her eyes were a little red and swollen, as if she had cried hard. However, it was also very obvious that the situation between her and Niezong had changed. How should it be put? It was as if the unfamiliar distance from before was gone. Gu Yundong glanced at Niezong, who coughed lightly and blushed. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. It seemed that they had had an open talk. Yenya's voice was slightly hoarse. Compared to yesterday, she was much more energetic. She looked at Gu Yundong and said, Sister Gu, I already know. My husband told me about the Yen residence. I was too stupid to see what was going on. Now I know everything. I think your plan is good. I agree. Gu Yundong was stunned and confirmed again. Do you know what you might face after this plan? I know. Maybe. I don't have a family anymore. Yenya lowered her head slightly and smiled bitterly. Actually, I don't have a family now. After a woman was married, her family was her backing, which was to stand up for her after she suffered from her in-laws, so that she would have a way out after being bullied. However, with Yenya, her maternal family was the one who really pulled her into eternal damnation. Then your mother. Gu Yundong knew that she still had someone she could not let go of. Yenya raised her head and smiled. She doesn't have much attachment to the Yen family to begin with. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't bear to part with me, she would have wanted to go to a Taoist temple to cultivate a few years ago. After I got married, she planned to go. I thought too simply that my father would more or less care about my current status. I thought that her life would be better. Unexpectedly, her father did not mind sacrificing her for by Muzi. It was obvious that her mother's life in the residence was not easy either. Gu Yundong sighed inwardly. However, she was relieved that Xianxia had really gotten over it. She looked at Nye Kong. Then shall we start tomorrow? No need. Let's do it today. The earlier the better. Nye Tsong narrowed his eyes, his lips curling into a cold smile. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1349. Things have been made big. Everyone's opinions were unanimous, and the rest was easy. After Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan left the Nye residence, they went straight to look for Song Dejiang. As for Nye Tsong, he came to the Chui residence aggressively, wanting to settle scores with Chui Lan. Imperial physician Chui and his daughter, who originally thought that everything was over, were stunned when they saw him bringing people to attack them. Nye Tsong pointed at Chui Lan and scolded, "My wife had no grievances with you. She only said that she was getting married and kindly invited you to her house as a guest. How did she offend you? How did these two sentences offend you that you were so ruthless to her and wanted to kill her?" Chui Lan's face turned pale. When Nye Tsong came to look for her, all the neighbors nearby had come to watch the commotion. When they heard this, they immediately started whispering. Chui Lan's reputation was not good to begin with. She did not have a smile on her face all day long, and she basically did not respond to her neighbors' greetings. As time passed, everyone felt that this person was not easy to get along with. Especially after Chui Lan started studying medicine and ran around with her father to treat men, she did not know how to avoid it at all, so everyone looked at her even more strangely. 2 days ago, what happened in the Yen residence had actually spread here. Although Chui Lan had explained, no one believed her. No one knew where the rumors came from, but they said that she ran to someone's house and smashed the Yen family's daughter's head with a stone. This was terrible. Was there something wrong with this girl's brain? Hence, the Chui father and daughter did not go out for the past 2 days and stayed at home obediently. Unexpectedly, Nye Tsong came knocking on their door and shouted loudly even though they were keeping a low profile. It was ridiculous. Imperial physician Chui was so angry that his entire body was trembling. He stood in front of Chui Lan and said, "Nonsense, you're simply spouting nonsense. My daughter didn't harm Madame Yen at all. She slipped and accidentally pushed your wife, causing her to hit the stone table. How did she become ruthless?" Chui Lan, who was standing behind him, also defended herself loudly. "Yes, I accidentally slipped. I didn't push her at all. I didn't. Don't slander me here. Get out, get out." Accidentally pushed her? Why is it completely different from what my father-in-law said? Besides, how can it be so coincidental that you slipped after my wife said that? Who would believe that? Let me tell you, my wife is unconscious now. As her husband, I will definitely not let this matter rest. You? Imperial physician Chui was furious. I don't know what Master Yen said, but this was an accident. You make it sound so nice. Can an accident offset a life? Nye Tsong sneered as he took a step forward. Imperial physician Chui gritted his teeth. What do you mean by a life? Isn't your wife alive and well now? Alive and well? She's unconscious and half dead. Nye Tsong was aggressive, but Imperial physician Chui did not back down. One wanted to seek justice for his wife, while the other wanted to prove his daughter's innocence. For a moment, no one could convince the other. Seeing that the two sides were about to fight, they finally attracted the officials of the imperial capital. Imperial physician Chui was an imperial physician, and Nye Tsong was a 7th grade official. Both of them had official positions. Now that a life seemed to be involved, the capital magistrate naturally could not ignore it. Things had gotten out of hand. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1350. Yihai's panic. The magistrate of the capital personally tried this case, but no one was convinced. The magistrate quickly found the other parties involved, the 3 members of the Yan family. Initially, he wanted to ask Yenya to come over, but when he heard that Yenya was lying on the bed unconscious, he could only give up. Yihai was stunned. He never expected Yenzheng to demand an explanation from the Cui family. He thought that everybody had reached a consensus on this matter. Now that things had blown up, Yihai was a little flustered. He secretly glared at Nyekong. "Didn't I tell you not to find trouble with the Cui family? Isn't this matter already over? I didn't plan to look for the Cui family at first, but the prerequisite is that my wife is safe and sound. But now, her condition is getting worse and worse. She has been unconscious since this morning and her breathing is weak. She looks like she's about to lose her life. Shouldn't I find the culprit and let Cui Lan die with my wife?" Yihai's eyes widened in shock. "What did you say? She's unconscious and her breathing is weak? How is that possible?" "Why is it impossible?" Yenzheng said loudly. "Father-in-law, you said that Yenya would be fine if she used by Muzi. How did it become like this?" This. Yihai suddenly felt a little guilty. When he saw Imperial Physician Cui beside him, he hurriedly said, "Yes, Imperial Physician Cui said that by Muzi can save Yenya's life." Yenzheng immediately sneered. "Doesn't that mean that the father and daughter have joined forces to harm my wife? All the more reason for me to settle the score with them." Yihai said softly, "Then you should discuss it with me. No matter what, I'm your father-in-law and Yenya's father." I was so angry that I couldn't care less. Yenzheng didn't look like he wanted to suppress his voice at all, so the magistrate in the hall heard him clearly. He didn't stop them and let them speak. Then, he figured out the cause and effect of the matter. Not only him, but the commoners outside also heard it clearly. Imperial Physician Cui, who was at the side, heard everything clearly. He immediately retorted, "I was telling the truth. By Muzi could indeed save Lady Yan's life. However, I didn't give by Muzi to her. Master Yan found another doctor to treat her. If anything went wrong during this process, it wasn't my fault." Yenzheng snorted. "Are you saying that the doctor my father-in-law found was useless?" Yihai quickly explained. "How is that possible? Although the doctor I found can't compare to Imperial Physician Cui, his medical skills are not bad." The few of them wrangled around, and the hall was a little chaotic. The magistrate heard the gist of it and more or less understood the cause and effect. Hence, he immediately slammed the wooden stick heavily. "Silence. Answer my questions honestly." "Yes, sir." The magistrate swept his gaze across the people in the hall one by one. A moment later he began to ask. "From the beginning, Madame Yan was pushed to the ground and injured. Now, Madame Cui said that she accidentally pulled Madame Yan after she slipped. But Master Yan also said that Madame Cui was agitated and deliberately attacked. Both sides have their own arguments, but they can't prove themselves. In my opinion, why don't we go to the scene and reconstruct what happened to see whose confession is more reasonable?" Actually, in the eyes of the magistrate, what Master Yan said was quite problematic. After all, who would suddenly go crazy and attack after hearing 2 sentences? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1351. Simple. However, when he thought about Cui Lan's reputation and her personality, he felt that it was possible for her to be impulsive. Therefore, the magistrate suggested that they go to the scene to take a look. Yenzheng knew that this magistrate of the capital was a practical person, so he was never afraid of things getting out of hand. It was difficult to prove that she had really slipped. After all, it had been a few days. Could it be that the stone that caused Cui Lan to slip was still there? How could they prove it? But it did not matter. Yenzheng's original intention was not to prove this matter. As long as the magistrate investigated, some clues would naturally be dug out. For example, who was the person who had Imperial Physician Cui check their pulse and prove that they needed by Muzi to save their life? In any case, it was not Yenya. Yenya's injuries were not serious. How could an imperial physician like Imperial Physician Cui not notice? According to Yenzheng's understanding, when Imperial Physician Cui took the pulse, it was through the bed curtains. The person in the bed curtains reached out for Imperial Physician Cui to take their pulse, and Imperial Physician Cui did not see who was inside at all. The Yen family had deliberately found someone who needed by Muzi to save his life. How could there be no trace of such a thing? The magistrate could discover it if he investigated seriously. If he were to make deductions after discovering it, it would be obvious what the Yen family had done. As expected, the magistrate brought people to the backyard of the Yen residence. There was no way to determine if Cui Lan had slipped or done it on purpose. However, when he asked the servants in the residence, he heard that something was amiss. Soon, the magistrate realized that the person whose pulse Imperial Physician Cui checked back then was not second Miss Yen at all. It was someone who had been judged by another doctor to need by Muzi to save his life. After that person was brought back to the residence by Yen Yihai to recuperate for a day, Yen Yas accident happened. Imperial Physician Cui's expression turned extremely ugly when he found out. He suddenly pointed at Yen Yihai and said angrily, "Were you lying to me? You didn't use by Muzi at all. I understand. You didn't want to listen to your brother and give by Muzi to the Cui family, so you schemed to make me give up on by Muzi automatically. You even used your own daughter? No wonder. No wonder he felt that something was wrong when he took her pulse. That's right, that person's injuries didn't look like they had just happened." However, at that time, the Yen family kept criticizing Cui Lan in his ear. They cried, threw a tantrum, and wanted to settle scores. He loved his daughter so much that he was frustrated. He subconsciously ignored the details. Imperial Physician Cui was extremely ashamed. If he had discovered it earlier, his daughter might not have had to endure these rumors at all. Niet Song's face was also filled with disbelief. He looked at Yen Yihai and asked in shock, "Father-in-law, is what Imperial Physician Cui said true? For by Muzi, you actually deliberately let Cui Lan slip and push my wife? How could you do this? Did you want to kill her?" "I didn't," Yen Yihai denied. "How could I do such a thing? By Muzi was indeed used by Yenya. Otherwise, she wouldn't even be alive." He refused to admit that he had set up his daughter. He was even furious and wanted to pounce on Imperial Physician Cui. "Your daughter almost killed my daughter. Now, for the sake of her innocence, you want to push all the blame to our Yen family. Do you have a conscience?" The magistrate frowned, and someone immediately came up to stop Yen Yihai. Imperial Physician Cui had already regained his rationality. When he heard this, he sneered. "Master Yen, there's no need to be so agitated. It's actually very simple to prove who designed all of this. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1352. Song Dejiang appears. How do you prove it? Niet Song asked cooperatively. Imperial Physician Cui narrowed his eyes slightly. "Let me take young Madam Ni's pulse again. I can tell if she has used by Muzi." Yen Yihai's expression changed slightly. Then, he rejected him even more righteously. "That's impossible. If you take her pulse, what if you have selfish motives and play tricks? I don't agree." However, the magistrate nodded and said, "I think Imperial Physician Cui's method is feasible, but Master Yen is right. Imperial Physician Cui is involved, so it's not appropriate to diagnose Lady Yen. Just find another doctor." "Sir, Lady Yan's injuries are serious. Ordinary doctors might not be able to tell." Imperial Physician Cui frowned. He did not object to looking for others, but it was useless if they could not tell. However, Imperial Physician Cui was an imperial physician. How many doctors were better than him? Niet Song pursed his lips and looked at a subordinate behind the magistrate. The subordinate nodded slightly and went to the magistrate's side. "Sir, I heard that Imperial Physician Song left the palace yesterday and is resting at home. Why don't we try and ask Imperial Physician Song for help?" Imperial Physician Cui's eyes lit up. "That's right. Wasn't Imperial Physician Song a ready-made candidate?" "Imperial Physician Song?" The magistrate frowned. "That guy has a very strange temper. It's rare for him to take a break. If we disturb him, I'm afraid he won't help." "Lord, I heard that Imperial Physician Song loves to treat difficult illnesses. Look, Madam Yen is currently in a coma, so it can be considered a difficult illness. Furthermore, as the head of the Imperial Hospital, Imperial Physician Song has the responsibility to cooperate with our investigation when he finds out that his Imperial physicians are involved in the case, right?" The magistrate felt that it made sense and nodded. Indeed. Cold sweat broke out on Yihai's forehead when he heard that. Ask Imperial Physician Song to come over? No, my lord. Imperial Physician Cui is on good terms with Imperial Physician Song. Who knows if he will cover up for him? Shut up! The magistrate suddenly shouted angrily. Imperial Physician Song is the head of the Imperial Hospital appointed by the current emperor. The emperor personally said that Imperial Physician Song is benevolent and fair. You haven't even seen him yet, and you dare to question Imperial Physician Song's morals. I think you're clearly guilty. Yihai broke out in cold sweat after being shouted at by the magistrate. He hurriedly knelt down and said, I was careless and said something wrong. Please forgive me. The magistrate snorted coldly. Get up. We'll talk about whether you're guilty when Imperial Physician Song comes. Don't say anything else about Imperial Physician Song covering up for anybody. Otherwise, according to you, I've worked with Imperial Physician Cui before. Do you think I'll cover up for him too? I wouldn't dare. Yihai stood up, but his head was lowered, and his heart was trembling. It was over. He was done for. His mind was spinning crazily, trying to think of some useful way to get through. However, the capital magistrate had already sent someone to invite Imperial Physician Song. He originally thought that Imperial Physician Song would decline. He did not expect him to come immediately. Imperial Physician Song even asked very professionally, Where is the patient? Nye Tsong led everyone into the Nye residence. The capital magistrate also brought Imperial Physician Cui, Master Yen, and the others in. However, they stopped at Anha Garden. The magistrate sent an old woman to follow Song Dejiang into the inner room. Yenya lay on the bed. Her face was pale and her breathing was very weak. Nye Tsong sat on the edge of the bed and grabbed one of Yenya's hands. He looked up at Song Dejiang eagerly. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1353. Song Dejiang's Anger, Imperial Physician Song. Please take a look at my wife. She has been unconscious for an entire day. I'm really worried that she will. Song Dejiang secretly pursed his lips. When he raised his head, he said with a serious expression, Lord Nye, don't worry. Since I'm here, I'll naturally do my best to treat the patient. Please put your wife's hand down first and stand at the side without making a sound. All right. Thank you, Imperial Physician Song. Nye Tsong immediately put down Yenya's hand, got up, and stood behind Song Dejiang. Song Dejiang asked the old woman who had followed her in to put a handkerchief on Yenya's wrist. Then, he sat at the side and closed his eyes to take her pulse. However, the more he examined, the uglier his expression became. In the end, his expression became even more serious, as if he had encountered a difficult illness. Nye Tsong held his breath as he watched from the side. He wanted to speak, but he was afraid of disturbing him. After a while, Imperial Physician Song retracted his hand. Nye Tsong hurriedly asked, How is my wife? Song Dejiang didn't answer him. He continued to instruct the old woman beside him. Untie the cloth on young Madame Nie's head and let me take a look. Yes. The old woman quickly and carefully removed the cloth. With this, the wound inside was revealed. The old woman took a look and suddenly gasped. She suddenly took 2 steps back. Imperial Physician Song, look. Song Dejiang wasn't the only one who saw it. Nye Tsong also saw it. His expression changed drastically. How did this happen? Yenya's wound had completely festered and was flowing with pus. It was an especially shocking sight. Nye Tsong grabbed Imperial Physician Song's hand and shouted on the spot. Imperial Physician Song, you must save her. I beg you, you must save her. When the people outside heard Nye Tsong's voice, they were shocked and looked at each other. Immediately after, they saw the old woman quickly walk out to the magistrate's side. She said, Sir, Lady Yan's injuries are very bad. I'm afraid the odds are slim. The magistrate suddenly frowned. Yihai was also stunned. How could that be? It was clearly not serious when her wound was bandaged a few days ago. She woke up at that time and was even sent back to the Nye family. Imperial Physician Cui also pursed his lips. Although there might be a conspiracy in the Yen family, Yenya had indeed been pushed by Cui Lan. If Yenya's life could not be saved, then Cui Lan, At this moment, other than Yanling and her daughter, who had been silent the entire time, no one in the courtyard wanted anything to happen to Yenya. However, reality often did not go as planned. Soon, Song Dejiang came out with an ugly expression. Nyetsong followed closely behind. However, his eyes were red and his hands were clenched tightly. He looked very agitated. The magistrate hurried forward and asked, "How is it?" Song Dejiang flew into a rage on the spot and said, "Nonsense, this is simply nonsense, too ridiculous. How can you treat illnesses like this? You're simply not thinking clearly. You don't take human lives seriously." The magistrate hurriedly got an old woman to pour him a cup of tea. After he drank it, he asked, "How is it? Can you tell the seriousness of Madame Yan's injuries? Did she use by Muzi?" Yan Yihai and Imperial Physician Cui immediately became nervous. Song Dejiang slammed the table on the spot. Of course she's never used by Muzi. Not only has she never used that, but she's also used the wrong medicine. What do you mean? The magistrate glanced at the pale Yan Yihai and asked, "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1354. Scapegoat. Song Dejiang snorted coldly. Young Madame Ni's injuries weren't serious to begin with. Although she injured her brain by hitting the rock, as long as she was treated well and rested for a few days, she would be fine. By Muzi wouldn't be needed for that injury at all. However, she happened to meet a quack who used other medicine on her. Not only did her originally wound not heal, but it even festered and caused pus. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. You have to know that the human brain is very complicated to begin with. Even us imperial physicians don't dare to be disrespectful when faced with such a situation. We have to be very careful. Otherwise, if we're not careful, such a wound might directly cause people to fall unconscious, blind, deaf, and all kinds of illnesses. The current young Madame Nye is in the worst situation. Her condition is already very serious. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid, the magistrate hurriedly asked, "Then what should we do?" Imperial Physician Song sighed. Originally, young Madame Ni's injuries didn't require by Muzi. Now, only by Muzi can save her. When Imperial Physician Cui heard this, he said on the spot, "Master Yen, what else do you have to say?" "Lord, you heard it. Master Yen didn't use that medicinal herb on Madame Yen at all back then. Madame Yan's previous injuries weren't serious either. All of this was orchestrated by the Yen family. They used their biological daughter to frame my daughter just to keep the Bai Muzi for themselves." Before the magistrate could speak, Nyetsong had already rushed forward. He didn't care if Master Yen was his father-in-law at all. He grabbed the man's collar and said with a livid expression, "Are you still human? That's your daughter. Your biological daughter. It's fine if you used her, but why didn't you treat her injuries properly? She's now the madam of my Nye family. Do you have any respect for my Nye family? Ha!" As he spoke, he clenched his fists, as if he was about to punch him. The magistrate hurriedly pulled him back. There was no choice. There were not many people in the courtyard of On her garden. He could only stop it himself. Calm down, young Master Nye. Now is not the time to be rash. The most important thing is to quickly treat your wife's injuries." Nye Tsong struggled for a while but could not break free. He gradually calmed down. He glared at Yan Yihai. "Where's Bai Muzi? Since Bai Muzi is still in your hands, quickly hand it out and help Imperial Physician Song save Yenya." Yan Yihai gritted his teeth and looked up, wanting to say something. The magistrate narrowed his eyes. "Yan Yihai, now that the evidence is conclusive, what else do you have to say? It's a fact that you slandered Imperial Physician Cui and his daughter and severely injured young Madame Nye. Come back to the government office with me and explain the matter clearly." Yan Yihai choked on his words. He clenched his fists and turned to look at Mrs. Yen. Lady Yen met his meaningful gaze and immediately felt a chill in her heart. They had been husband and wife for many years. What did she not understand? Old Master wanted her to take the blame. But Lady Yen hesitated. After everyone returned to the government office, the magistrate began the interrogation again. Yan Yihai looked at Mrs. Yen a few times. In the end, Mrs. Yen could not withstand the pressure and could only cry out and admit all her crimes. Lord, Lord, please spare my life. I was blinded by greed and did not want by Muzi to fall into the hands of others. I also hated Xianxia for marrying a good husband and was afraid that she would come back for revenge after a good life. That's why I had bad thoughts. All of this is my fault. Master, he did not know. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1355. Obtaining by Muzi. Yihai immediately looked at her in shock. What did you say? Everyone was speechless. Did he think that everyone else was stupid? However, Mrs. Yen gritted her teeth and confessed to the crime. Master Yen looked heartbroken and even pleaded for Mrs. Yen. Moreover, there was no direct evidence to prove that Master Yen was behind this, so the magistrate had no choice but to convict Mrs. Yen. However, since Master Yen had previously planned to use by Muzi to save his daughter's life, and now that Yanya's life was indeed at stake, it was a good opportunity to show Master Yan's fatherly heart. The magistrate immediately ordered Master Yen to send by Muzi to Imperial Physician Song so that he could use it. Yihai's heart ached terribly, but since things had come to this, he could only hand by Muzi over with both hands. With Imperial Physician Song around, he could not use other medicines this time. As for Lady Yen, although she had confessed, the crime was not serious. After all, between Cui Lan and Xianxia who had been harmed, Cui Lan had been harmed by rumors, but this situation was not easy to punish. As for Xianxia, she was Mrs. Yan's daughter after all. If her mother was severely punished because of her, Xianxia would still be accused of being unfilial. Therefore, in the end, the magistrate sentenced Mrs. Yen to 50 strokes of the paddle and fined her some silver. He then sent her back to reflect on her actions. Mrs. Yen was carried back. Half of her life was gone after 50 strokes. However, just as they were about to leave the government office, Wenzheng suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked at Mrs. Yen coldly and said, Mrs. Yen is so heartless to my wife, but you still tricked her into giving you the key to the shop on Jinlan Street and let Mother Chen rent it out in the name of the Yen family. You're really shameless. Yihai was stunned. He really did not know about this. Wenzheng lifted his chin slightly. Since Mrs. Yen thinks that the key looks good, I'll give it to you. I'll get someone to change the lock of the shop. Yihai's face turned green as he shouted angrily at Mrs. Yen. Aren't you going to hand over the key? Lady Yen trembled and said shakily, The key is in the residence. Yihai was exasperated. Is my Yen residence short of food or drink for you? Do you have to be greedy for that little rent? There are so many shops in our Yen family. Aren't they enough for you to deal with? You've really embarrassed me. Lady Yen had a bad temper to begin with. This time, she took the blame for Yihai because she thought that the Yen residence could not lack a man in charge. It was for her and her daughter's future. However, not only was Yihai not grateful, he even scolded her in front of everyone for that little bit of face. Lady Yen was immediately furious. She didn't even care about the pain of her injuries. She bared her teeth and scolded him. What's the use of that little bit of money you gave me? Aren't you the one who controls the money at home? I'm the mistress of the household and I manage the huge Yen residence. I only have so little money. What can I do? There are shops at home, but do you want me to manage them? You still have the cheek to criticize me. You bastard, I've already taken the blame. Before she could finish speaking, Yihai stopped her. All right. There's no need to shout about this everywhere. We'll talk about it when we get back. You're still injured. Then, he turned to Wenzheng and said, I'll get someone to send the key to you when we get back. You should hurry back too. Xianxia is still waiting for you at home. Although Lady Yen was unwilling, she still snorted and stopped talking. After the Yen family left, Wenzheng only watched from afar. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1356. Falling out after this incident, Wenzheng had completely fallen out with the Yen residents. Although they were still father and son-in-law on the surface, they both knew in their hearts that this was Yihai's idea and Mrs. Yen had taken the blame. Wenzheng was angry and did not interact with the Yen residents, so Yihai could not say anything. However, Yihai definitely couldn't bear to part with a big tree like the Nye family. Especially after this incident, the Yen family's reputation would definitely be damaged, and their business would probably plummet. After all, no one wanted to do business with someone with a problematic reputation. This time, they had really suffered a double loss. Because of this, Yihai was even more unwilling to give up on the Nye family. It didn't matter. Their relationship was stiff now because Yenzheng was in a fit of anger. However, Yenya's mother was still in the residence, and Yenya had that kind of personality. Recently, she would be cold to Lady Yen and doted on his concubine. Later, he would ask her to persuade Yenya and they would be meeting again soon. However, Yihai did not expect this. As soon as he returned home, he heard from his servant that aunt who had heard that master had almost killed Yenya for a medicinal herb. She was disheartened and decided to cultivate in a Taoist temple. Now she had packed her bags and was ready to leave. Yihai was furious when he heard that. He ran to concubine Hu's courtyard angrily, wanting her to give up on cultivating. However, aunt who held the hairpin to her neck and threatened to kill herself. Yihai was shocked when the usually weak woman suddenly became so crazy. For a moment, he did not know what to do. He had encountered too many things today, causing his mind to be in a mess. However, at this moment, Yenzheng came to the door again, saying that he was worried and wanted to personally retrieve the key. When he heard that aunt who had almost committed suicide, he immediately rushed over and said that Yihai was going to vent his anger on aunt who due to the loss of Muzi. She took the key and protected aunt who as she left the Yen residence. Yihai did not dare to push it too far. If something happened to aunt who, the Yen family would be worse off if word got out. They would no longer have a place in the capital. Therefore, when Yenzheng left with aunt who, Yihai did not stop her. He thought that it would be good for her to calm down first. He did not expect that once she left, she would never have the chance to come back. Because the Taoist temple that concubine who went to later had a background, the Abbey Dean was once the eldest princess. Even though this princess was already old and had long cut off all ties with the imperial family, with Yihai's status, even if this eldest princess was someone hated by the imperial family, he did not dare to offend her. Yenzheng first brought aunt who back to the Nye residence and let her meet Yenya. After the mother and daughter spoke, he arranged for her to stay and sent her to the Taoist temple another day. Then, Yenzheng returned to Anhe Garden and looked at Gu Yundong, Shao Qingyuan, and Song Dejiang, who were already sitting in the room. Song Dejiang was holding by Muzi, but he was glaring at Gu Yundong as if he had a feud with her. Yenzheng walked over and sat on the edge of the bed to look at Yenya's forehead. Her forehead was deliberately injured. In fact, Yenya's injuries were almost healed. She would be fine after resting for 2 more days. At this moment, the wound on her forehead had been wiped clean and she looked much more refreshed. Yenzheng was relieved. Only then did he look at Song Dejiang, who still did not look too good. He hesitated for a moment before asking worriedly, "Imperial Physician Song, is there a problem? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1357. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Song Dejiang snorted. "There's nothing wrong with you. She's the one with the problem." As he spoke, he pointed at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong looked innocent. "What's wrong with me? I got by Muzi myself." "You still dare to say that you're doing this for by Muzi? You clearly know that I'm on good terms with Imperial Physician Chui, yet you still want me to deceive him." Song Dejiang was exasperated. "How can I face him in the future?" "Imperial Physician Song, you can't say that." Gu Yundong's expression was even more upright as she said in all seriousness, "If it weren't for me, Imperial Physician Chui and his daughter would still be scolded by the neighbors. My plan was for you to lie, but this is a white lie. Look, Chui Lan has also been proven innocent. Since I've helped her, it's not too much for me to take by Muzi as a reward, right?" Song Dejiang couldn't win against her, but she was right. He snorted and turned his head. He happened to see Yenya beside him. He did not expect Yenya to agree with him and even look at Gu Yundong with slight envy and admiration. Actually, at first, Yenya did not know that Gu Yundong had thought of this method. She only thought that she and Yenzheng had discussed it together. Only later did Yenzheng tell her. Although Gu Yundong's main goal was by Muzi, her plan was to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Yenya had always stayed in the Yen residence and had never seen such an intelligent woman like Gu Yundong. Yenzheng also noticed her gaze. Perhaps because they had a good chat yesterday, he knew more about Xianxia. Previously, he wanted Xianxia to learn from Nanny Qi. Nanny Qi was capable and could always influence Xianxia subtly. However, he had forgotten that Nanny Qi was a servant, and Xianxia was the master, but she was also a master who was not recognized by the elders of the Nye family. Therefore, Nanny Qi could not treat Xianxia lightly. Instead, she was restrained and must watch her distance to her master. Now that she had met Gu Yundong, Yenzheng felt that this was fate. Therefore, he whispered into Xianxia's ear, "Do you think she's very powerful?" "Yeah." Yenzheng smiled. "She did a lot of things. I'll tell you slowly in the future." Just the fact that she had escaped to Xuanhe Prefecture with her family was not something ordinary people could do. But if you want to see it with your own eyes, you can chat with her more. Sister Gu is going to open a milk tea shop in the capital. You've heard of it. It's the milk tea shop that Nye Shuang mentioned to me. When the time comes, you can follow her to take a look. Is that really possible? Gu Yundong naturally heard their conversation. Facing Xianxia's expectant gaze, she secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, she smiled and nodded. Of course. But in the eyes of outsiders, you're still recuperating. It's better to go out later. Coincidentally, my shop needs to be renovated. I'll bring you to take a look when it's done. Xianxia's eyes lit up slightly. She was a little excited and embarrassed as she said softly, "Thank you." Xianxia had grown up without any friends because of her status, and Yanling Gu Yundong was the first? After making a deal, and seeing that Xianxia still needed to rest, the few of them stood up and walked out. Dejiang held the Muzi in his hand. "Leave this with me for now. I'll treat it first. I can't leave the capital now. Ask your mother to come to the capital sometime. I'll treat her." If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1358. Too many things in your brain. Gu Yundong looked at Muzi and finally felt happy. There was finally hope of curing her mother's illness. This was a big matter that she had always taken to heart. Now, she could finally heave a sigh of relief. Nevertheless, "I'll write a letter back, but if my mother comes, my father will definitely accompany her. There are many things to do at home, so I'm afraid I'll take some time to arrange it. It's impossible to reach the capital in a short period of time. Keep it for now. When my parents come, I'll look for you." "Sure." Dejiang put away the herb and the few of them walked to the door. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Dejiang left the Nye residence first. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan left after eating at the Nye residence. Muzi's matter had come to an end. Next, Gu Yundong planned to renovate the shop. As for the matter with Marquis Huayin, Gu Yundong also wanted to sigh. According to Dejiang, he did not know much about Marquis Huayin. He only knew that Marquis Huayin was indeed quite powerful in the capital 20 years ago, but the emperor 20 years ago was the late emperor. The late emperor was muddle-headed and unreasonable, especially in recent years. A few years ago, Marquis Huayin had somehow offended the late emperor. Although the late emperor had not punished him, Marquis Huayin had slowly declined in the capital. Of course, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even if it declined, it was still much better than ordinary families. Unfortunately, the descendants of Marquis Huayin in this generation didn't have much potential. They were all mediocre people who could listen to their superiors and work diligently, but they didn't have much talent to climb up. Otherwise, since they met the current emperor, as long as they had real talent, they would definitely be put in an important position. As for what happened in the Marquis Huayin's mansion, Dejiang did not know if any children had been lost 20 years ago. However, Dejiang promised that he would help them find out. From the looks of it, that was the only way. However, Gu Yundong still felt that she should find an opportunity to go to Marquis Huayin's mansion personally, or come into contact with some madam or old madam in the mansion to obtain information. Shao Qingyuan saw her sad face and couldn't help but sigh. He pulled her over and patted her head. "Aren't you tired of having so many things in your head?" We've just found Muzi, and you're still busy renovating the shop. You also have to think about the Marquis Mansion's matters. You don't even give yourself time to rest. How tiring is that? Didn't we agree that there's no hurry for the Marquis Mansion's matters? Take it slow. Anyway, we're already in the capital, and they can't escape. Besides, don't you still have me? Don't you have a lot of things to do too? You still have to look for Song Dejiang tomorrow to learn medicine from him. Since Shao Qingyuan had come to the capital, it was rare for him to meet someone as skilled as Song Dejiang. Naturally, he had to learn some skills from him. Moreover, Song Dejiang liked to discuss medicine with Shao Qingyuan. He realized that Shao Qingyuan was especially smart in this aspect. Sometimes, when he went to a dead end, Shao Qingyuan would change his direction and give him ideas. Therefore, after Shao Qingyuan entered the palace, Song Dejiang refused to let him go. Even though they had only discussed for a day, both sides had gained a lot. Actually, part of the reason why Song Dejiang helped so readily this time was because of Shao Qingyuan. After all, he was the head of the imperial hospital. If he was exposed for doing such a thing, the consequences would be serious. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1359. Mrs. Yu. Song Dejiang had been on leave for the 2 days, so he naturally wanted to take this opportunity to continue discussing with Shao Qingyuan. Gu Yundong knew that he liked medicine, so she could not wait to take on everything. She wanted him to focus on learning and work hard to learn all of Song Dejiang's skills. After all, this was a rare opportunity. Shao Qingyuan knew what she was thinking, and his heart instantly ached. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on her. None of my matters are as important as yours. Gu Yundong smiled and kissed him. All right, I promise you. I'll take my time and do one thing at a time. First, Before she could finish speaking, Shao Qingyuan pressed her down. First of all, we should have a child. The blanket was lifted. Before Gu Yundong could hide the shock on her face, it was covered by the blanket. The sky darkened, and the house was filled with spring. Gu Yundong woke up late the next day. Shao Qingyuan had already gone out. She could not help but rub her back. Suddenly, she felt lazy and did not want to get up. She did not want to go out. Anyway, Shao Qingyuan had told her to take it slow. He had worked so hard last night. Gu Yundong was a little indignant. She might as well rest at home today and not go anywhere. When Tong Shuitao came in, she saw her miss lying on her back on the bed, looking at the bed curtains above her head and thinking about life. She couldn't help but be curious. Miss, what's wrong? It's fine. I'm just a little lazy and don't want to get up. Tong Shuitao immediately went to her side and asked, Then should I bring you food? Might as well. Tong Shuitao went out. Gu Yundong put on a cloak and walked to a shelf to rinse her mouth and wash her face. After washing up, she went back to bed. It was already cold in the capital at this time of the year. It was early October, and no one knew when it would snow in the capital. Not long after, Tong Shuitao brought in hot porridge and buns. Miss, when I went out this morning, I walked around the alley. I bought these buns at the entrance of the alley. I saw that the business there was especially good. I heard that it's an old business in Hatai Alley. It's been selling buns for many years. The skin is thin and the filling is big. Gu Yundong took it and tore open a corner. Instantly, gravy flowed out. The skin was indeed thin and the filling was big. It looked quite appetizing. Miss, is it good? Yes, it's not bad. Buy some again tomorrow. Tong Shuitao was overjoyed. Sure. Gu Yundong ate porridge and buns at the same time. After eating and drinking her fill, she wanted to cover herself with a blanket and listen to Tong Shuitao talk about the novelty of Hatai Alley. Unexpectedly, her plan to stay in bed for the entire day was foiled. Someone knocked on the door outside. Tong Shuitao ran to open the door and came back to say that it was the sister-in-law from next door. Gu Yundong could only ask Tong Shuitao to invite her to the central room to rest for a while. She quickly got up, dressed, and tidied herself up. When she reappeared in the central room, it had been quite a while. The sister-in-law next door was looking up at the environment of the house with a hint of envy in her eyes. Gu Yundong had heard from Tong Shuitao that the house next door was also a triple-entry house. However, that house was left behind by their ancestors. Now, their family was 3 generations in the same house, and all 20 to 30 people lived together. The old master only had 4 sons and a daughter. In addition, he had a few daughters-in-law and grandchildren from the next generation. They did not split up. Wouldn't the entire house seem crowded? The sister-in-law in front of her was the wife of the eldest son next door. Her surname was Yu. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1360. Wenzheng. The big tree Gu Yundong smiled and went forward. You must be sister-in-law Yu. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Sister Gu, please don't say that. I came to disturb you without telling you in advance. Please don't take offense. How come? I saw that you guys had just moved in, so I came to take a look. I wanted to come over a few days ago, but I saw that you guys went out early in the morning and looked very busy, so I didn't come. You didn't go out today, so I made some bean buns at home for you to try. Don't despise them. Mrs. Yu pushed the basket on the table forward and smiled. Gu Yundong hurriedly smiled. How can I do that? I've troubled sister-in-law Yu. Sigh. We'll be neighbors in the future. There's no need to worry. I see that you've just arrived. If you need any help in the future, just look for us. Gu Yundong nodded. Then I won't stand on ceremony. There's no need to stand on ceremony. By the way, where are you guys from? Gu Yundong saw that she looked like she wanted to chat and felt a little helpless. However, the other party did not have any ill intentions. She also wanted to understand the situation in Hatai Alley, so she chatted with her. We came from the Xuanhe Prefecture. Xuanhe Prefecture? That's far away. It's your first time in the capital, so you have to be more careful. People will freeze to death in another 10 days or so. You have to prepare the charcoal first, or your lives won't be easy. All right, thank you for your reminder, sister-in-law. Mrs. Yu waved her hand. What kind of reminder is that? I was just saying. By the way, what are you guys doing in the capital? Is your man preparing to participate in the imperial examination? Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. You think too much. It was not the time to come to the capital to participate in the imperial examination. Moreover, Hatai Alley was lively and noisy. It was not suitable for students to buy a house and live there. Gu Yundong smiled. No, we're just here to open a small shop and do some small business. I see. Mrs. Yu nodded. She knew what to do. Then I have to tell you first. It's not easy to do business in the capital, especially opening a shop. It's best to find a backer. Otherwise, someone will find trouble. Right. Gu Yundong frowned. Mrs. Yu was right. Whether it was in Fengkai County or the Xuanhe Prefecture, she did have someone backing her up. Although the shop in the capital was also in partnership with Madame Dai, Nie Shuang, and the others, most of their forces were in the Xuanhe Prefecture. Moreover, there were too many high-ranking officials and nobles in the capital. Her milk tea shop was unique. Who knew how many people would covet it? She had no foundation in the capital. If she opened her business rashly, she would easily become a fat piece of meat in the eyes of others. Yes, she had to find a backer, and one that no one dared to provoke. Gu Yundong began to choose suitable candidates in her mind. In the end, she thought of Wenzheng. Well, he was indeed a big tree here. According to Niet Song, Wenzheng had just arrived in the capital when he was promoted to the Assistant Minister of Official Personnel Affairs by the Emperor. In the past, Wenzheng was only a small official in the Hanlin Academy. His position immediately skipped a few levels when the new emperor ascended the throne, and it shocked many people. Of course, there were also people in the royal court who were unconvinced. However, Wenzheng's name was already famous. The things he had done for the emperor in the past had been suppressed. Now that they had all been exposed, these incidents added up to more merit than many officials did in the royal court. If anyone was unconvinced, they could compete. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1361. Return gift. Moreover, some of the emperor's trusted aides actually knew Wenzheng's identity and were naturally on his side. Actually, the rank of an official was secondary. The most important thing was that the current Wenzheng was a favored minister in front of the emperor. Everyone could see how much the emperor valued him. His future was limitless. Those who were smart knew that they should prioritize befriending him. Therefore, to Gu Yundong, Wenzheng was definitely the best candidate to be her backer. She just didn't know when he would return to the capital. Gu Yundong thought about it and quickly suppressed everything. Only then did she continue talking with Mrs. Yu. Mrs. Yu chatted until almost noon. She only went back when it was time to cook. She carried a basket of bean buns, and Gu Yundong asked Tong Shui Tao to return the gift with the white sugar and canned food. This had always been her return gift. Mrs. Yu took a look and her face was filled with surprise. She had never seen canned food before, but white sugar was rare in the capital. However, they were almost never gifts, especially not the first meeting gift. Not only was this thing expensive, but it was also not easy to buy. This daughter-in-law of the Shao family was really generous. Mrs. Yu walked out of the Shao family's house in a daze. Gu Yundong finally heaved a sigh of relief. Tong Shui Tao poured her a cup of hot tea and sighed. Sister-in-law Yu is really eloquent. Gu Yundong nodded in agreement. It was also a skill to be able to chat so well with the first time they met. However, she did know a lot from Mrs. Yu. The most important thing now was to prepare the charcoal fire, lest they wouldn't have a place to buy it when it got cold. Thus, in the afternoon, Gu Yundong brought Tong Shui Tao out. The two of them went to the shop first. Last time, because of Mother Chen, they only stayed at the door for a moment and did not have the time to take a good look at the inside. Due to Muzi's matter, she did not have the time to come over these few days. Since she was out today, she could take a look at the situation of the shop. She would draw the blueprint later so that she could find someone to renovate it. Gu Yundong opened the door of the shop and saw someone peeking out from the shop next door. They might suspect that she was here to rent a house. Gu Yundong ignored them and strolled around the shop. Perhaps Mother Chen had planned to rent it out, so the shop was very clean. At this moment, there was only a little dust, and it did not look messy. The shop here was somewhat similar to the one in the Xuanhe prefecture, but this one was bigger. Another thing was that the position of the backyard was different. It would not make much of a difference if she renovated it later. Gu Yundong looked at the shop in front of her and then at the backyard. The backyard was originally for people to live in. It was also a huge project to set it up as private rooms. As for the second floor, Gu Yundong was very satisfied after looking at it. This floor was slightly higher and had a better view. It was also as spacious as the first floor and could receive many guests. Gu Yundong rubbed her chin and walked around the shop. Finally, she went back in satisfaction. On the way back, they strolled around Hatai Alley and found a few shops with relatively fair prices. After buying things like charcoals and furnaces and heaters to ward off the cold, the two of them slowly returned home. Seeing that it was still early, Gu Yundong took out a brush and paper and began to draw the renovation plan of the shop. Actually, there was no need to think too much about it. The interior decoration was similar to the Xuanhe Prefecture's new tea pavilion. Gu Yundong felt that since it was a branch, it would be best if the shops were all of the same style. That way, they would have more characteristics. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1362. Carpenter Pang. Therefore, Gu Yundong quickly had some ideas in her mind. She drew quickly and steadily, and it did not take long for her to draw the rough blueprint. Then, she began to adjust and modify where she was not satisfied. After the painting was done, Shao Qingyuan happened to return. Gu Yundong quickly showed him the blueprint. How is it? Do you feel that there's anything that needs to be changed? There are even more madams and young ladies from aristocratic families in the capital. Most of them have their own circles or people whom they don't like. They care more about their status. They have clear ranks and might need too few rooms. Gu Yundong pondered for a moment. That was indeed the case. These madams of aristocratic families valued their privacy. They were still a little different from the Xuanhe prefecture. There were too many high-ranking officials and nobles in the capital. Gu Yundong pointed at the blueprint. So, the second floor should also be private rooms? Yeah. Gu Yundong was about to draw another one when Shao Qingyuan pulled her over. It's late. You should draw tomorrow. Let's eat first. Okay. Gu Yundong immediately put down the brush and paper in her hand. The next day, Shao Qingyuan didn't go out again. After Song Dejiang's rest days ended, he still had to be on duty at the Imperial Hospital. Gu Yundong sat in her room and started to paint again on the design of the second floor. In the afternoon, She went to look for a carpenter with Shao Qingyuan. She had been familiar with Uncle Feng. Now that she had to find an unfamiliar carpenter, she would probably have to explain what she had drawn again. The carpenter they found was introduced by Nye Kong. His surname was Pang, and it was said that his craftsmanship was very good. He was also reliable and had a fair price. When Gu Yundong and the other man went over, Carpenter Pang was making a box cage. There was a lot of demand for carpenters these days, so there were also many people in this industry. Naturally, the competition was equally intense. According to Nyetsong, Carpenter Pang's business was mediocre. He took on the work of his neighbors because he worked slowly and had a stubborn temper. One of his 2 disciples was mute, and the other was a taciturn person. But it had to be said that there was a reason for slow work to produce fine work. Carpenter Pang was slow because he was meticulous. If there was anything wrong, he would rather restart the work. He was very responsible when doing things. Even if you urged him to hurry, he would not hand it over casually. In Gu Yundong's opinion, this should be considered Carpenter Pang's obsessive-compulsive disorder. Therefore, no one came to look for him for urgent work. In addition, there were some competitors who did not like Carpenter Pang and ruined his reputation outside. He and his 2 disciples were people who worked hard and did not know how to explain. As time passed, business naturally decreased. Fortunately, his neighbors knew his personality and craftsmanship. Most of them were relieved to leave it to him. Carpenter Pang's current work was also recommended by his old clients. For example, Gu Yundong. Nyetsong knew him because when he got married previously, he had seen an exquisite makeup box from Xianxia. He knew that aunt who had gotten someone to get Carpenter Pang to make it a few years ago. After using it for a few years, the makeup box was still very sturdy and beautiful. Later on, Nyetsong also asked Carpenter Pang to make a few things. They were all very good. This time, Gu Yundong wanted to renovate the shop, so he directly introduced him to her. Carpenter Pang was in his 30s and was not good with words. When he saw Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan enter, he quickly stood up and let them sit. Then that was it. He didn't want to pour them a glass of water. He turned around and continued to make his box. Gu Yundong had heard that he had gotten married a few years ago. Later, his wife had passed away and he did not even have a child. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1363. Slow work. It was not that no one had tried to matchmake him all these years, but when they heard that his 2 disciples had no parents and had to rely on him to raise them, they all retreated. Moreover, Carpenter Pang did not seem to be interested in getting married and having children, so he had been single until now. However, to him, his 2 disciples were equivalent to his biological sons. Fortunately, although his 2 disciples were also taciturn, they still knew how to treat their guests. They hurriedly poured water for them and continued to stand at the side to help Carpenter Pang. Gu Yundong watched from the side for a moment, and knew that Carpenter Pang was indeed the kind of person who was neither arrogant nor rash. He was very stable. Gu Yundong explained the purpose of her visit. I want to renovate a shop. It has 2 floors and a courtyard at the back. It's at Jinlan Street. The shop is a little big, so it might take some time. I wonder if Master Pang can take on this job. Carpenter Pang was stunned for a moment. A shop? And it was a 2-story one? Before he could say anything, the 2 disciples behind him looked at Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan excitedly. This was a big job. If they did it well, the payment this time should not be low. Actually, they had very little work to do now, especially when the weather was cold. Their business was even less. When the box in their master's hand was ready, they would have nothing to do. They did not expect such a huge job to suddenly come. How could they not be excited? His 2 disciples looked at Carpenter Pang expectantly. Carpenter Pang quickly came back to his senses. His eyes were also slightly glowing, and he rubbed his hands uncomfortably. After pausing for a moment, he still reminded them in advance. I can accept the job, but I'll tell you the truth. I work slowly, especially for such a big shop. I have to take a look first and discuss with you what's appropriate. I can't deliver work in a short period of time. It doesn't matter. As long as the work is done well, it can take as long as needed. If it's convenient for Master Pang, I can take you to see the shop now. I've already drawn out how to renovate the shop. We can sit down and talk about it later. Carpenter Pang paused and glanced at the box cage in his hand. This box was actually already done. It could be handed over after a little polishing. He would continue working when he came back tonight. He could send it to the client tomorrow morning. Hence he stood up. All right. I'll go take a look at the shop now. Carpenter Pang got up, took off his apron, and went inside to wash his hands and face. He then followed Gu Yundong out. His 2 disciples hurriedly followed. On the way, Carpenter Pang learned from Gu Yundong that they had been introduced by Niekong. Carpenter Pang still had some impression of Niekong. He was quite happy and grateful. When he arrived at Jinlan Street and saw the 2-story shop, Carpenter Pang realized that it was even bigger than he had imagined. He brought his 2 disciples around and circled it twice before returning to the shop in front. When he saw Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan talking, he quickly went forward excitedly. Young Master Shao, Madam Shao, well, take on this job. Gu Yundong nodded and asked them to sit. Then she took out the blueprint. In that case, I'll tell Master Pang about the situation of the shop. Okay, go ahead. My shop will sell milk tea. It's similar to a tea house, but it's different from ordinary tea houses. My tea house is specially used to receive women, so the decorations inside are different from other shops. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1364. Accepting the job specializing in receiving women? This was the first time Carpenter Pang had heard of this. He felt that it was very novel. Gu Yundong pointed at the blueprint. This is what the interior of the shop looks like. Master Pang, take a look. As expected, Carpenter Pang lowered his head and his eyes immediately lit up. This blueprint was too clear. Almost at first glance, he could imagine what the shop would become in the future. Carpenter Pang had also renovated shops in the past. Most of the time, it was the client who told him where to add cabinets and boxes. No one had ever drawn such a detailed blueprint to tell him the final result. It was just that there were some things that he could not understand, but Gu Yundong would explain. There were even some data on it. Carpenter Pang looked at the blueprint lovingly. Even his 2 disciples standing behind him could not help but swallow their saliva. After introducing the renovations to the shop in front and the courtyard at the back, it was finally time for the situation on the 2nd floor. Carpenter Pang frowned slightly when he saw the 2nd floor. Gu Yundong knew how to draw, but she did not know much about architectural design. In the past, when she was building a house, Feng Danning would tell her how to modify it. He would tell her which parts were unreasonable and what could not be done, or if the data was too idealistic. She would slowly modify what problems might arise. Gu Yundong had to listen to Carpenter Pang's professional opinion. As expected, Carpenter Pang shook his head at some places on the 2nd floor. To make the 2nd floor look like private rooms, the project was a little big. Many places had to be demolished and rebuilt, so Gu Yundong's blueprint was not very accurate. There was no other way. Gu Yundong handed the blueprint to Carpenter Pang. How about this? I'll tell you how many rooms I want on the 2nd floor and how the layout is. Master Pang, you can decide for yourself after taking the measurements. How about that? Carpenter Pang was stunned. Is that appropriate? Yes, of course. Carpenter Pang looked at Shao Qingyuan again. After all, in their eyes, Shao Qingyuan was the head of the family. Shao Qingyuan nodded. Listen to her. Carpenter Pang was relieved. Gu Yundong and Carpenter Pang talked about some details. Both parties signed a contract and confirmed that Master Pang would start work the next day. After Gu Yundong paid the deposit and the key to the shop, the group left. Now that the renovation was done, the next step was to recruit people. This gave Gu Yundong a headache. In the Xuanhe Prefecture, Madame Dai and Ye Shuang had taken care of recruitment matters. She had only arranged for 2 people. Now that she was in the capital, she was really unfamiliar with the place. Where could she recruit people? Especially since the milk tea shop was a novel business, she was worried about hiring ordinary people to work in the shop. It seemed that she could only buy some. The others were fine. They could be bought for training and employment. It was just that the shopkeeper was not easy to find. Gu Yundong decided to ask for Madame Guest's opinion when she went to the Qin residence tomorrow. A few days ago, the Qin family closed their doors and refused guests, so Gu Yundong did not disturb them for the time being. Yesterday, she asked Tong Shui Tao to send a card to the Qin family to confirm that she would come tomorrow. Gu Yundong did not know much about the rules of the wealthy families in the capital. It was only when she mentioned it to Xianxia 2 days ago that she remembered that she should send the card first so that she would not have missed it. Shao Qingyuan knew that she was going to the Qin residence, so he turned around and asked her, "Shall I go with you tomorrow?" "No need. Qin Wenzheng isn't back yet. You'll just sit there and do nothing even if you go. How boring would that be?" Shao Qingyuan thought about it and agreed, so he didn't mention it again. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1365. I want this shop the next morning. Gu Yundong brought Tong Shui Tao directly to the Qin residence. Unexpectedly, not long after they left, Carpenter Pang's disciple called Pang Shan hurriedly ran over and knocked on the door. Shao Qingyuan was reading a medical book. Song Dejiang had given it to him the day before yesterday, and asked him to read it first before discussing it with him. Shao Qingyuan was very interested in this medical book. Hearing the knock on the door, Shaowen immediately went to open it. Pang Shan, who was at the door, staggered and almost fell in. Shaowen quickly supported him and asked, "Why are you so flustered? What happened?" Pang Shan swallowed his dry throat and said in a panic, Someone came to the shop to cause trouble. Master is not allowed to work." Shaowen frowned and quickly brought him to look for Shao Qingyuan. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he narrowed his eyes slightly, put down the medical book, and walked towards the door. "Let's go to the shop to take a look." Shao Wen and Pang Shan hurriedly followed. Fortunately, they were not too far from Jinlan Street and arrived not long after. At this moment, there were already a few people poking their heads out and pointing at the entrance of 68 Jinlan Street. At this moment, there were two groups of people confronting each other in the shop. On one side was Master Pang and his disciple, and on the other side, it looked like they were deliberately looking for trouble with 5 or 6 people. The leader was dressed well, like a young master from a rich family. Behind him were his servants. At this moment, this young master-like person sized up Carpenter Pang from head to toe. His eyes were filled with disdain as he said condescendingly, "I'll say it again. I have bought this shop. I'll naturally get someone to repair it later. You guys should leave." Carpenter Pang's face turned red. He was not good with words to begin with, and this disciple beside him was mute. However, he was the one who signed the contract. How could he leave so easily? "Young Master Tang, I've already discussed it with the boss. I don't care if you've discussed it or not. Anyway, I'll leave my words here. If you continue to work here, I won't be polite to you. Think about it yourself. Should you leave now, or should I get someone to throw you out?" Young Master Tang was also very unhappy. He had long taken a fancy to this shop. However, he did not expect that he would act too late. Just a day later, the shop was bought by a woman surnamed Nye. He had asked around. That woman surnamed Nye was not from the capital. Her family was in Xuanhe Prefecture and she was rich. That was why she came to the capital to buy a shop. Her only backer in the capital was her brother, Nye Tsong, who was a 7th grade official. It was just a 7th rank official. Young Master Tang didn't fancy him. After all, he wasn't someone without a backer. He even felt that it was the Nye family's honor that he had taken a fancy to this shop. Therefore, young Master Tang came to look for her twice and said that he wanted to buy it. Although he had lowered the price, he was not bullying others, right? However, that woman surnamed Nye did not agree. Young Master Tang felt that she did not know what was good for her and wanted to use other methods. But at this moment, that woman actually left behind this shop and ran back to the Xuanhe Prefecture. Young Master Tang thought that Nye Shuang was afraid of offending him, but she didn't want to sell the shop, so she simply escaped reality. As a result, this shop had been empty. Young Master Tang's temper even rose. "If you have the ability, just leave it here. I'll keep an eye on you and see when you will return to open the shop. If you dare to open the shop, I will dare to come and find trouble. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1366. 100,000 Taels. Young Master Tang did not look for Nye Tsong and just watched over the shop for half a year. Unexpectedly, a servant had come to report some time ago that a mother of the Yen family was planning to rent out the shop. However, after a day, she said that she was not renting anymore. Young Master Tang was confused when the shop opened. A carpenter began to repair the shop. They were clearly planning to do business. Could it be that the woman surnamed Nye had returned? All right, she had finally stopped hiding after half a year. Young Master Tang led his men over. Unexpectedly, when he asked, Carpenter Pang said that the owner of the shop was a couple. The male owner's surname was Shao and he did not know any woman with the surname Nye. Young Master Tang felt that Nye Shuang might have secretly sold the shop. All right, since she wanted to sell it, why didn't she sell it to him back then? Just as he was thinking, there was suddenly a commotion outside. 3 men walked in one after another. Carpenter Pang turned around and saw that it was Shao Qingyuan. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Young Master Shao. Shao Qingyuan nodded and looked at young Master Tang. Young Master Tang also looked at him. He felt that the other party's gaze was so cold that he could not help but take a step back. The servant behind him hurriedly supported him and asked softly, "Young master, are you cold? Get lost. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Young Master Tang turned around and hit his head. Then, he secretly took 2 deep breaths and looked at Shao Qingyuan again, as if the person who had retreated just now was not him. He sized up Shao Qingyuan. Yes, he didn't know him. "Are you the owner of this shop? Who are you?" Shao Qingyuan also looked at him. "My surname is Tang. Tang Qijing." Young Master Tang raised his chin slightly. "I've never seen you before. You're not from the capital, right?" "I'm not." Tang Qijing was instantly relieved. When he saw the murderous aura on this person just now, his heart was beating like a drum. He pointed at the shop and said, "I'll buy this shop. Name a price." Shao Qingyuan admired his wife. Why was it that every time she took a fancy to a shop, someone wanted to snatch it? Oh, that's not right. Her wife did not buy this shop. So this person was provoked by Nye Shuang? Shao Qingyuan saw his high and mighty appearance and thought that he must have something to rely on. But 100,000 taels, he said slowly. Tang Qijing was stunned and almost choked on his own saliva. "How much did you say?" 100,000 taels, Shao Qingyuan repeated. "If you pay 100,000 taels, this shop will be yours. Have you gone crazy from poverty? 100,000 taels? It was more than enough to buy 10 or 20 shops. He actually asked for an exorbitant price. Was he toying with him?" When others heard the conversation at the door, someone quickly laughed. After being glared at by the servants behind Tang Qijing, those people immediately lowered their heads and covered their mouths. Unexpectedly, Shao Qingyuan nodded at Tang Qijing. "I've been a little poor recently. My family bought a new house and some assets, so I'm a little tight on money, so I didn't even have time to buy servants. The price of this shop is 100,000 taels. It should be enough." Tang Qijing. *CKU. He was so angry that he laughed. "Do you think that's possible? Who the hell will buy your shop for 100,000 taels? Since you think it's impossible, why are you still here?" Shao Qingyuan's face turned cold. Tang Qijing felt that the other party was provoking him and did not take him seriously at all. "Okay, you're messing with me." He pointed at him and trembled with anger. He immediately said to the servants behind him, "Smash this place. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1367. Could he be the Shao Qingyuan? The servants were about to make a move. You can't smash it." Carpenter Pang hurriedly wanted to make a move. Although they had just started work, they had brought a lot of wood over. It would be a loss to smash it. However, how could the servants of the Tang family listen to him? One of them kicked a stool at the side. However, just as he was about to walk forward, someone suddenly blocked his way. Shao Wen suddenly grabbed his hand, turned around, and flipped forward. This person fell to the ground. Seeing this, the servants of the Tang family instantly surrounded him. The 4 of them fought against Shao Wen alone, but they actually did not have the upper hand. Tang Qijing instantly felt that things were a little tricky. He regretted bringing those servants along today. He should have brought the 2 skilled ones along. Now that the 4 of them could not even beat one person, if they lost later, where would he put his face? Tang Kaijing's eyes darted to Shao Qingyuan's face. Then, he realized that this murderous aura and bulging muscles might be stronger. He immediately gave up. A wise man submits to circumstances. He understood. Hence Tang Qijing shouted, "Stop, come back." The 4 of them already felt that they were going to lose. When they heard this order, they retreated without a word. One of them did not retreat in time and was kicked down by Shao Wen. He quickly got up and continued to run to Tang Kaijing's side. Shao Wen was speechless. He also silently returned behind Shao Qingyuan. Tang Qijing exhaled and pointed at Shao Qingyuan. "All right, you're quite bold. If you have the ability, tell me your name." Shao Qingyuan was speechless. Was he stupid? What? You don't have balls? You don't even dare to say your name. Are you afraid that he'll take revenge on you later? At this moment, even though he knew that it was a provocation, Shao Qingyuan still said, "Shao Qingyuan." "All right, Shao Qingyuan, right? Just you wait." Then, Tang Qijing hurriedly led the few of them to the door. However, not long after he walked out, he suddenly stopped and frowned. He turned around and asked, "What did he say his name was just now?" "Shao Qingyuan." The servant behind him also reacted. "Young master, could he be that Shao Qingyuan?" Tang Qijing shook his head. "How can it be so coincidental? It must be someone with the same name." "But what if? Didn't they say that Shao Qingyuan is a kind person who helps the world? Which kind person doesn't look benevolent?" "Is he benevolent?" The servant thought for a moment and felt that what the young master said made sense. However, he quickly shook his head and still felt that it was a little suspicious. "But young master, Shao Qingyuan is from Xuanhe Prefecture, and the owner of this shop is also from Xuanhe Prefecture. Isn't this a little too coincidental? Moreover, his age matches." Tang Kaijing's expression was a little dark. If it was really Shao Qingyuan, it did not seem appropriate for him to find fault with him. "Young master, why don't we give up on this shop? Back then, you wanted to buy this shop to destroy the Chen family shop opposite. Isn't the Chen family shop opposite not doing much business now without you doing anything?" Tang Qijing thought about it and felt that it made sense. He looked at the servant behind him in agreement. "You're right. I'm busy. That shop is no longer worth my attention. Moreover, I don't think the feng shui of this street is good. Look at the Chen family. They've only been open for half a year and they're already in this state. Wouldn't I be at a disadvantage if I buy it?" Of course, of course." The servant nodded repeatedly. However, after taking a few steps, he asked, "Young master, should we tell the royal prince that Shao Qingyuan came to the capital? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1368. Meeting Madame Gu again. Tang Qijing frowned. The royal prince, Yi Xilan, was the descendant of an aristocratic family who had said that he had by Muzi and asked Shao Qingyuan to be his servant for a year. He thought for a moment and shook his head. "Forget it. We're not sure if this person is that Shao Qingyuan. If we make a mistake later, the young royal prince will think that I tricked him and skin me alive." Besides, he was not familiar with the royal prince. It was better not to get involved in the matter between that man and Shao Qingyuan. Tang Qijing looked back at the shop and left in a hurry with his subordinates. Only when they were far away did Shao Qingyuan let Carpenter Pang continue. Carpenter Pang was a little worried and asked him, "Will young Master Tang come again?" "No. That Tang guy came to find trouble and looked like he was showing off." However, when he saw that he could not take advantage of the situation, he immediately left. Although he was a little cowardly, it was obvious that he was not a rash person. He would probably figure out the stranger's identity before taking action. As for after the investigation, he probably wouldn't come again. However, the others didn't know that the shopkeeper of the shop next door quickly came over and said to Shao Qingyuan, "Young master, do you know who young Master Tang was just now?" "Who is it?" Shao Qingyuan really didn't know him. That person said mysteriously, "His mother is the cousin of Marquis Huayin and has Marquis Huayin backing her. If you hit his people directly, he will definitely settle scores with you later." "Marquis Huayin?" Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect Tang Qijing to be related to Marquis Huayin. Shao Qingyuan fell silent for a moment. The shopkeeper who spoke saw his worried expression and immediately shook his head. He didn't say anything else and turned around to leave. Shao Wen walked to Shao Qingyuan's side and asked in a low voice, "Young master, will everything be all right?" "It's fine." Shao Qingyuan comforted Carpenter Pang and the other two. He told them to do whatever they had to and not worry about anything else. Then, he brought Shao Wen back to his house in Hatai Alley. Shao Wen saw that his young master did not seem to care at all. He picked up the medical book again and read it. At this moment, Gu Yundong had already entered the Qin residence. Madame Gu was very happy to see her. She pulled her and said, "You've been in the capital for a few days. Why are you only here now? The guests I rejected at the door are others. I couldn't wait to welcome you." As he spoke, a small figure ran over from outside. Qin Anning rushed into Gu Yundong's arms eagerly. "Sister Gu, I haven't seen you in a long time. I miss you so much." "Has Anning grown taller?" Grinning, Qin Anning spun around in front of her and asked, "Don't I look prettier too?" "Yes, you look even better." When Madame Gu heard this, she could not help but hold her forehead. "How can you be so thick-skinned?" Qin Anning pouted and said to Gu Yundong, "Sister Gu, the capital is so boring. I want to go back to Fengkai County. I think you're used to being wild." Previously, in Fengkai County, Qin Wenzheng had taken in many students. Although there was a difference between men and women, these people were still fellow disciples to Anning. Occasionally, they would bring her to play and take good care of her. Qin Wenzheng wouldn't restrain her either. After she went to Yongfu village, she couldn't even stay in the house and ran out every other day. However, it was different in the capital, especially since Qin Wenzheng's current identity was an important minister in the court. Anning's every move was seen by others. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1369. Your Shao Qingyuan is enough. Madame Gu wanted Qin Anning to learn some rules and etiquette, but Qin Wenzheng did not care. He doted on his daughter very much and only said that everything was fine as long as she was happy. There was no need to be so rigid like the other women from aristocratic families. It was tiring to look at them. However, Madame Gu felt that if she did not teach Anning now, she would definitely be criticized in the future. What if Anning could not stand those rumors at that time and her reputation was ruined? Would Anning be happy then? Madame Gu and Qin Wenzheng had a disagreement over their daughter's education, but they could not determine who was right and who was wrong. Madame Gu only complained to Gu Yundong. She would not spout nonsense in front of others. Gu Yundong did not know what to do. She did not have any children. Her younger siblings were all raised independently. Moreover, their environment and status were different, so she could not give any suggestions. She lowered her head slightly and looked at the lively little girl in front of her. She smiled and said, "I'm afraid you won't be able to return to Fengkai County in a short period of time." Anning sighed and said worriedly like a little adult, "Things don't go well in this world. It's really too difficult for me." Uft. Gu Yundong was amused. Seeing her, Gu Yundong could not help but think of the children at home. She had already written a letter and sent a pigeon back. If her parents came to the capital, Kiki would probably follow them. However, Yunshu and Yuenji had to study, so they might not come. Madame Gu pointed at Anning. "All right, I'll talk to your sister Gu. Go play first." Oh! Qin Anning could not bear to part with Gu Yundong. However, although she was lively and active, she was also a sensible person. Knowing that they had serious matters to discuss, she bid them farewell and returned to her courtyard. The Qin family's house had 5 courtyards. Qin Wenzheng had made so many contributions to the imperial court. As soon as he arrived, the emperor of the capital gave him a residence, and it was an especially good location. Gu Yundong had just walked over and realized that besides the few people they had brought from Fengkai County, they had bought a few more families of servants. They were all quietly doing their jobs and tidying up the huge mansion. Gu Yundong was so envious that her eyes turned red. Why was it so difficult for her to buy a 3-yard house? She sighed in grief and indignation before talking about opening her shop. Last time, Nye Shuang bought a shop. I came over this time to renovate it. When the time comes, I will choose a good day to open it. Madame Guest's interest was immediately piqued. Milk tea shop, new tea pavilion. She had been to the new tea pavilion in the Xuanhe prefecture, but only once. After all, her family was in Fengkai County, so it was impossible for her to often go to the Xuanhe prefecture to drink milk tea. However, after that one visit, Madame Gu started to miss it. Now that she heard that the capital was also going to have it, she was immediately a little excited. Seeing this, Gu Yundong immediately smiled at her. Yes, it's a milk tea shop. Are you interested in cooperation? Seeing her ulterior motive, Madame Gu could not help but laugh. You already have 3 bosses. You have money and ability. Why do you still need me to cooperate? Of course I do, Gu Yundong said matter-of-factly. I need your identity. If others knew that Madame Qin is a partner of this shop, who would dare to cause trouble? Madame Gu was stunned for a moment before she smiled. Why do you need my identity? Your Shao Qingyuan is enough, right? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1370. Shao Qingyuan's reputation. Gu Yundong was confused. Brother Shao. Seeing her like this, Madame Gu suddenly understood. It seems that you still don't know your Shao Qingyuan's reputation in the capital. Gu Yundong really did not know. She subconsciously straightened her back and hurriedly asked, Tell me what happened. What happened to my brother Shao's reputation? Mrs. Gu coughed lightly and took a sip of water before slowly talking about something she had heard not long ago. Very few people had seen Shao Qingyuan, but most people in the capital, especially the influential families, knew this name. The cowpox vaccination method was a very great achievement. To a country where many people died every year because of smallpox, this was an invention that transcended eras. Whether it was the emperor or others who were born in this dynasty and witnessed it with their own eyes, it was a very deep mark in history. In fact, it would have been fine if that was all. There were countless achievements in this world, and not everyone would be so famous. Most of them became famous after death and were only remembered by the world. However, this matter had been specially promoted by the emperor. Shao Qingyuan, a country bumpkin who was not even a doctor, actually dared to personally inoculate the prince. This courage, boldness, and fearlessness of death really impressed some people. The emperor wanted to promote this method and establish his prestige for the prince. He wanted his name to go down in history, so he secretly got someone to write a few poems to praise this matter. As the greatest contributor, Shao Qingyuan naturally could not avoid such publicity. Moreover, because of his identity, he attracted the resonance and admiration of many citizens. Look, an ordinary person like him had left his name in history because of this matter. The emperor had placed him in an important position, and even the prince was grateful to him. If they worked hard, they might have such achievements in the future, right? Then some scholars began to glorify him. Some tea houses wrote books about his deeds, and some wanted to write biographies about him for future generations to read. Gu Yundong had sweat when she heard that. She suddenly thought of her publicity in the Xuanhe prefecture. It was really similar. But she really didn't expect Shao Qingyuan's reputation in the capital to be like this. Madame Gu smiled and said, You know now, right? If others know that the shop belongs to Shao Qingyuan who invented the cowpox vaccination method, who do you think will dare to come and find trouble with you? Although your husband doesn't have any power, he has a reputation. Whoever dares to find trouble with your shop will probably be scolded as ungrateful. There are so many aristocratic families and nobles in the capital. Most of them care about their reputation. Who would carry such a blame? At least for the time being, no one would go and get into trouble. As for when Shao Qingyuan's deeds slowly faded in the future, would they still dare to? Madame Gu felt that with Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong's abilities, they would have grown up. Anyone who came to find trouble with them would be asking for trouble. Gu Yundong could not help but want to laugh. Should she be grateful to the emperor? If he hadn't worked so hard to promote and add fuel to the fire, it wouldn't have had such an effect. She thought for a moment and suddenly asked, Brother Shao will be recorded in history. What about me? I made the white sugar. It's very popular in the capital now. It's very rare. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1371. A village woman surnamed Gugu Yundong was a little excited at the thought of it. Being a historical celebrity was so exciting. However, Madame Gu laughed dryly and lowered her head slightly to take a sip of tea. After a while she said, "Perhaps there will be records." A Gu woman in a village in Fengkai County? Gu Yundong was speechless. Could a historian be a good person? Was a woman not worthy of having a name? Gu Yundong was not in a good mood. She took a big sip of tea in frustration. However, she also knew that the world was like this now. There might not even be the word Gu. Unless you were especially famous, even a noble daughter of the royal family and the empress of a country would only have a title and a surname, let alone a commoner like her. Forget it. Gu Yundong did not care much about leaving her name in history. She just wanted to live well now. Now that she knew about Shao Qingyuan, she had an idea. Nevertheless, I still want to work with you. Madame Gu was a little surprised. Why? Brother Shao's reputation will prevent us from trouble, but the milk tea shop is targeted at rich madams and young ladies. Someone has to take the lead. These people won't spend at my milk tea shop for Brother Shao, but with you around, as the assistant minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel Affairs and the wife of the emperor's favorite minister, you will definitely attract many customers. Madame Gu was enlightened. You're asking me to help you promote it. Actually, this is also one reason. There's another reason. I've discussed it with Madame Dai and Ye Shuang. We'll definitely open shops in other prefectural cities in the future. However, our energy is limited after all. It's impossible for us to have connections in every prefectural city. Therefore, in the future, we'll find a suitable person to cooperate with when we open shops in any prefectural city. Gu Yundong suddenly had this idea after seeing Duanwan in Wanqing Prefecture. However, at that time, she only thought of working with Duanwan in Wanqing Prefecture and did not think about the capital. It was Madame Dai who suggested it when she sent the letter back to them. Their shop was different from ordinary shops. New Tea Pavilion targeted women, rich women. However, such a client group needed someone to take the lead, especially someone with a certain status. Madame Dai and the others had such an effect in the Xuanhe Prefecture, but they could not do it elsewhere. It was impossible for them to find a capable shopkeeper like others who opened shops. Even if a shop opened by an unknown foreigner was novel and well advertised, these madams and young ladies might not buy it. On the other hand, some women in the market would come in to take a look out of curiosity, but this way, their target group would be wrong. New Tea Pavilion didn't need everyone in the prefectural city to know, but it needed everyone in a certain circle to know. The Xuanhe Prefecture had leaders like Madame Dai and Ye Shuang, which was why it was so popular. The Wanqing Prefecture had Duanwan. Although she was not the daughter of an official, she also interacted with the daughters of officials. The Duan family's reputation in the Wanqing Prefecture was enough. In the capital, Gu Yundong felt that the Gu family was very good. Gu Yundong did not need the Gu family to do anything. It was just a name. She would give the shop in the capital a monthly boost. It was mutually beneficial. Because of this, Madame Dave and Ye Shuang felt that they could compress their shares. After all, they were only providing money. They could not help with anything else. When Madame Gu heard her thoughts, she was a little tempted. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1372. You came at the right time. As someone who had seen the Xuanhe Prefecture milk tea shop popular with her own eyes, Madame Gu knew that once the fire in the capital was lit, the effect would definitely be doubled. She had not been in the capital for long. Wenzheng had bought a few shops in the capital a long time ago, and her family did not lack money now. But who would complain about having too much money? She still had a daughter now. Looking at Anning, she did not know what kind of person she would marry in the future. As her mother, she naturally had to prepare more dowry for her. When the girl was married, she didn't need to panic when she had money. After hesitating for a moment, Madame Gu could not help but nod. Gu Yundong immediately signed a contract with her. Although they were on good terms, even brothers had to settle accounts clearly. With the contract, if Qin Wenjing did not agree in the future, it would not be good to go back on his word, right? Gu Yundong happily put away the contract. Madame Gu also happily put the contract into a box and locked it. Then, the two of them began to discuss the opening of the shop. Before the shop opens, I'll send an invitation to the madams and young ladies in the capital to our residence as guests. We've been in the capital for so long, but we've never invited guests. When the time comes, take out some new things like milk tea, double-skinned milk, fried chicken, and pastries for everyone to try. These people will definitely like them. Gu Yundong thought so too. This was a rare opportunity for publicity. At the mention of the banquet, Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes slightly and said, "Then can you do me a favor and invite the Madam and Miss of Marquis Huayin's family?" Marquis Huayin's family? Madame Gu said, "Who do you want to see in Marquis Huayin's family?" Yes. Gu Yundong did not hide it. Brother Shao's background might be related to Marquis Huayin. Madame Gu was surprised. Of course, she knew that Shao Qingyuan's background was still a mystery. Previously, Qin Wenzheng had told her that they had suspected the Tao family. Later, they confirmed that the third young master of the Tao family was not Shao Qingyuan, and there were no more clues. Qin Wenzheng had also helped to keep an eye out, but they did not expect it to be related to Marquis Huayin in the capital. Yes, the surname of Marquis Huayin was Shao. Madame Gu hurriedly said, "It's naturally not a problem for me to invite Marquis Huayin's family. However, if you want to know Shao Qingyuan's background, I'm afraid it won't work." You don't know, but Marquis Huayin's family has been keeping a low profile in recent years and doesn't like to stand out. In addition, Marquis Huayin is now mediocre. Although he has the title of Marquis, he has received an idle position and doesn't have any real power in his hands. His younger brother is the same. There are two smart people in the younger generation, but they're only elementary scholars now. Therefore, the old madam and the marquis' wife don't like to go out. However, the heir apparent's wife likes fun. If we invite them to a banquet, the people who go out will probably be from the heir apparent's generation. The younger generation was only a few years older than Gu Yundong. It was impossible for them to know about Shao Qingyuan's background 20 years ago. Even if they came, she would not be able to find out anything. Although the daughter-in-law of Marquis Huayin was eloquent, she had only married into the Marquis mansion for 6 to 7 years. Gu Yundong frowned slightly. It made sense. Although the Qin family was currently popular, the Qin family did not have an old madam. It was impossible for other families with higher seniority to come over. Seeing her conflicted expression, Madame Gu smiled and said, "But you came at the right time. Although we can't invite the old madam and the others of Marquis Huayin over, we can go to the Marquis mansion." Gu Yundong's eyes lit up and he hurriedly asked, "What do you mean?" "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1373, Person Drenched in Sweat. Madame Gu smiled and said, "Previously, I received an invitation from the Marquis mansion saying that the plum blossoms in the backyard of Marquis Huayin's family had bloomed and invited everyone to admire the flowers. Originally, I thought that I wasn't familiar with them and wanted to reject them. Now that you want to go to the Marquis mansion, this is an opportunity. Flowers could be admired any time. They were just looking for an opportunity to hold a banquet." In the short time that Madame Gu had been in the capital, many ladies from aristocratic families had held banquets. She had received countless invitations, and Madame Gu had only gone twice. Marquis Huayin's family's heir's wife was relatively late. It was really because the old madam and the others didn't like this kind of liveliness, but they still had to socialize. Moreover, Marquis Huayin's family had been glorious in the early years, so their plum blossom forest was really big and beautiful. There were indeed many madams and young ladies who went for the beautiful scenery. Gu Yundong immediately smiled. What a coincidence. When is the date? 2 days later. 2 days later, Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. All right, I'll go. Then, Madame Gu gave Gu Yundong some instructions and told her about the situation in Marquis Huayin's residence. She asked her to stay for a meal before sending her out. Gu Yundong only realized something after leaving the Qin residence and getting into the carriage. She had forgotten to ask the Gu family if they had a candidate for the female shopkeeper. However, after thinking about it, she decided to forget it. In any case, they would meet again in 2 days. When the time came, it would be the same if she asked. When she returned home, she saw Shao Qingyuan leaning against the recliner reading a book. When Shao Wen was not around, Gu Yundong sent Tong Shuitao away. She walked over and laid on him. She hugged his waist and said, I heard a lot about you when I went to the Qin family today. Shao Qingyuan quickly hugged her to prevent her from falling. When he heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Me? What is it? So you're so famous in the capital. Your reputation seems to be very useful. Shao Qingyuan put down his book and propped himself up slightly. He carried her and sat on his lap. It's all untrue. Outsiders say I have a kind face. Gu Yundong burst out laughing. She held his face and looked left and right. After a while, she nodded. You do look kind. Shao Qingyuan narrowed his eyes, pressed her head down, and kissed her. This girl was very bad. She even dared to tease him. Gu Yundong was overjoyed. She leaned into his arms and talked. She told him about her cooperation with Madame Gu in the Qin residence, and also about going to Marquis Huayin's residence in 2 days. Speaking of Marquis Huayin's family, Shao Qingyuan was silent for a moment. He thought of Tang Qijing, whom he had met in the shop today. This person's mother seemed to be the cousin of Marquis Huayin? Tang Qijing. Hearing this name, Gu Yundong nodded, indicating that she would remember it. Shao Qingyuan looked at her and said, I'll go with you in 2 days and wait for you outside the mansion. Unfortunately, only women were invited. Gu Yundong smiled and pinched his face. Are you worried? Yeah. All right, then wait for me outside. If there were any clues, she could tell him immediately. After all, it was about his background. She hoped that she would gain something from this trip to the Marquis mansion. Gu Yundong wanted Shao Qingyuan to reunite with his family as soon as possible. 2 days later, Gu Yundong and the others took a carriage to the Qin residence early in the morning. Then, they met up with Madame Gu and headed to Marquis Huayin's residence. However, not long after they left, a carriage hurriedly entered Hitai Alley and stopped in front of the Shao family's house not long after. Then, the coachman turned around and helped the sweating person out of the carriage. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Ads by PubRev Chapter 1374. Something urgent. After the people in the carriage got out, the coachman hurriedly went forward and knocked on the door. Instead, after knocking for a long time, there was no response. The coachman turned around and looked at the person behind him. Song Dejiang frowned when he heard someone open the door of the house next door. Mrs. Yu poked her head out. When she saw them, she hurriedly said, Are you looking for the Shao family? They're not around. The couple went out in a carriage early in the morning. When Song Dejiang heard this, he quickly turned around and asked her, Do you know where they went? Mrs. Yu shook her head. I'm not sure about that. Is there something urgent? Leave your name. When they come back, I'll help you tell them. My surname is Song. They'll know once you tell them. I do have something urgent to attend to. If they come back, please help me pass on the message. Mrs. Yu waved her hand. It's no trouble at all. Song Dejiang thanked her again before wiping his sweat and hurriedly getting into the carriage. He glanced at the Shao family's gate and said to the coachman, Let's go to the shop on Jinlan Street to take a look. The coachman quickly changed direction and went straight to 68, Jinlan Street. Unfortunately, when Song Dejiang stood in the shop, he only saw the busy Carpenter Pang and the other two. Carpenter Pang said that Shao Qingyuan and his wife had not come today. Song Dejiang was a little frustrated. When the coachman saw this, he quickly helped him up. Master, we don't have time to look for them. If we don't go back, we might. Song Dejiang exhaled, and something in his eyes slowly became firm. He gritted his teeth and lowered the curtain of the carriage. He instructed the coachman, Let's go back to the residence. At most, I'll apologize to them when they come back. The coachman nodded and drove the carriage even faster. Soon, they returned to the Song family. At this moment, Shao Qingyuan and Gu Yundong had no idea that Song Dejiang was looking for them anxiously. They had already followed Madame Gu to the door of Marquis Huayin's family. Gu Yundong glanced at the door, turned around, and said to Shao Qingyuan, who was sitting in the carriage, I'll go in first. Okay, be careful. If you see anything wrong, come out. Gu Yundong laughed. I'm just going to admire the flowers. Why do you make it seem like I'm going to the battlefield? Don't worry. I'll take good care of myself. Shao Qingyuan held her hand. I'll wait for you outside. After Gu Yundong got off the carriage, Shao Qingyuan nodded at Madame Gu. Sorry to trouble you. It was not until Madame Gu led Gu Yundong and Anning into the residence that Shao Qingyuan sat back in the carriage. This was the main gate of the Marquis mansion, so it was not appropriate for the carriage to stop here and wait. Shao Qingyuan looked around and realized that there were also some official residences near the Marquis mansion. There were no large tea houses or restaurants, but there was a tea shop at the entrance of an alley further away. Shao Qingyuan asked Shao when to pull the carriage away and sat down in the shop. Gu Yundong followed Madame Gu through the door and quietly looked up to assess the scenery in the Marquis mansion. As expected of the once prosperous Marquis Huayin's mansion, the mansion was even larger than the one the emperor had bestowed to Qin Wenzheng. Even though the current Marquis mansion was far inferior to the past, the scenery was still spectacular. The servant led them through the weeping flower door. Immediately, a person welcomed them with a smile. Mrs. Qin, you're finally here. I was just saying that I should take a look at the door. Come. This way. As she spoke, she looked down at Qin Anning and said, You must be Anning. You're so pretty and smart. Anning obediently paid her respects. Only then did Gu Yundong know that this was the wife of the heir of Marquis Huayin. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1375. Gu Yundong is inconspicuous. The heir's wife smiled and stood up. She looked at Gu Yundong with a puzzled expression. This is my niece. Her husband's surname is Shao. She heard that the plum blossoms in the Marquis mansion are a scene in our capital and insisted on coming over to take a look. I brought her here to meet her. I hope you won't take offense. Although Madame Gu was only a few years older than Gu Yundong, Qin Anning addressed Gu Yundong as elder sister, and Gu Yunshu was Qin Wenzheng's disciple, so the seniority could only be calculated like this. Of course I welcome you. I like people. My husband's surname is Shao. Who knows, we might have been a family 500 years ago. Gu Yundong pursed her lips and smiled meaningfully. Wasn't that so? She had come exactly because they might be a family. She followed suit and bowed. Then the heir's wife led them inside. Before they got close, Gu Yundong saw a rose-red scenery in the distance. It was really beautiful, like a paradise. It was indeed a scene in the capital. The plum blossom forest in the Marquis Huayin's mansion was indeed beautiful. Gu Yundong could not help but hold her breath. Even Madame Gu was a little surprised. Seeing them like this, the heiress couldn't help but purse her lips and smile. Let's go. Standing far away now is the best. Being in the plum forest is another feeling. That's right. The few of them continued walking. Soon, they heard low voices and laughter. It seemed that there were already many madams and young ladies in the plum forest. When they saw Madame Gu coming over, a few people immediately stood up to welcome her. After all, he was a popular person in front of the emperor. Even though there were many aristocratic families with statuses higher than Qin Wenzheng, they still smiled at Madame Gu and did not dare to underestimate her. Gu Yundong held Qin Anning's hand and stood quietly at the side. She listened to Madame Gu introduce her and then nodded slightly in greeting. However, there were too many people. Not long after, the smile on Gu Yundong's face could not hold on any longer. She was not the only one. Anning, who was beside her, could not help but shake Gu Yundong's hand a few times. After finally walking to the pavilion and sitting down, the heir's wife finally said, Anning, do you want to go over there to play? The little girls are all over there. Do you want to join in the fun? Actually, Qin Anning did not want to go. She felt that they were not on the same side. However, she was even more unwilling to stay here. Her mother and these madams and young ladies would definitely talk for a long time. She was too bored. In any case, it was fine as long as she left this place. She did not have to play with those people. Therefore, she nodded and looked at Madame Gu. Madame Gu glanced at Gu Yundong. She knew that she had a motive for entering the Marquis mansion. She could not sit here with her all the time. Hence, she said to Gu Yundong, Yundong, help me keep an eye on her. She'll listen to you. Don't let her go wild. All right. Gu Yundong nodded obediently and bade farewell to the other madams and ladies. She then held Qin Anning's hand and left. In the eyes of many madams, Gu Yundong was not eye-catching. This married woman was probably just using Qin Wenzheng to see the world. Without her around, these people felt more at ease. The maidservant quickly led Gu Yundong and Qin Anning to the other side of the forest. When they were almost there, Gu Yundong saw 7 or 8 young girls laughing and playing. They were probably all under the age of 10. Qin Anning was not willing to go over. She stood where she was and spoke to Gu Yundong. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Ads by PubRev Chapter 1376. The apology isn't pure, however. The girls on the other side saw them. The people who were playing looked at each other. Not long after, 2 ladies of the same age as Anning ran over and stood in front of Qin Anning, inviting her. Anning, are you coming with us to play? Qin Anning did not. She did not like these people. They liked to compare at such a young age. It was either that their parents doted on them or that they had learned the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. They were praised and rewarded. They even asked her if she was very knowledgeable. After all, her father was a young genius and had caused a sensation back then. Later on, when they found out that Anning was not as good as them, they all looked at her in a strange way. It was as if she had embarrassed her father just because she was not a talented girl. Therefore, the last time they met, they parted on bad terms. Qin Anning did not expect them to come looking for her again. Frowning, she shook her head and said, "I'm not going. I want to accompany my sister Gu." The 2 girls looked up at Gu Yundong curiously. Then, they turned around to look at the other little girls and quickly said, "Anning, come with us. It was our fault last time. When we went back, we were scolded by our parents. We know our mistake and won't do it again." Startled, Qin Anning's heart softened at the sight of how guilty they looked. The young lady was not a calculative person to begin with. Since they had already apologized, it would be rude of her to continue harping on it. She immediately pursed her lips and said softly, Then I'll forgive you." Then, she looked up at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong laughed. "You can go if you want. I'll be here admiring the flowers myself. Just call me if you need anything." Gu Yundong and Qin Anning had different thoughts. She knew that these people would condescend to come over and invite Anning because of her father. They said that they had been scolded by their parents last time. She guessed that their parents had asked them to build a good relationship with the young lady of the Qin family. The apology was not pure, and they did not really realize that they were wrong. But what did it matter? Anning was young. Deep down, she longed to play with other children. If she was restrained, Anning would never know the true thoughts of these young ladies in the capital. As Qin Wenzheng's daughter, the people she would come into contact with in the future were these people. She could not avoid them. Gu Yundong just watched from the side. Qin Anning quickly followed the 2 young ladies to their small circle. Gu Yundong had sharp eyes and noticed that there seemed to be a young lady in the center of them, who looked even younger than Anning. Thinking about it, this young lady was also a person of noble status. When Gu Yundong saw that they were speaking quickly, she separated her attention and sized up the people around her. Most of the people in this area were the maidservants of those girls. They basically stood far away. Some were alone, and some were gathered together to talk. The rest were the old maids in the marquee mansion. Gu Yundong's target was these people. She saw an old woman picking up the plum blossom branches that had been torn off the ground. She was probably afraid that the young masters here would accidentally step on them and fall. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and quietly reached into her sleeve. She took out the silver bracelet from her space and put it on her wrist. This silver bracelet was specially made after she heard the news from Liangzi in the Wanqing prefecture. If the marquee mansion was really Shao Qingyuan's house, then the elders of the marquee mansion should have seen this bracelet. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1377. Gu Yundong's little trick. Gu Yundong wore the bracelet and specially walked to the old woman's side. She bent down and picked up one of the broken branches. The hand with the silver bracelet stretched out in front of the old man. "For you." The old woman was stunned. She followed the bracelet's hand and looked up. Then she was shocked and said in fear, "I don't dare to trouble madam. I can do it." Gu Yundong stretched the bracelet in front of her again. "I'm fine. It's just a matter of convenience." "Madam, Just enjoy the flowers and tea. There are snacks in the pavilion over there. If you need anything else, feel free to tell me. Gu Yundong nodded. All right, I understand. Thank you. After saying that, she turned around and wanted to leave, but the bracelet slid down her wrist and fell to the ground. Seeing this, the old woman hurriedly picked up the bracelet and handed it to Gu Yundong. Madam, this is your bracelet. Gu Yundong turned around. Why did it fall off again? The buttons don't seem to be reliable anymore. I have to get someone to repair it later. As she spoke, she reached out to take the silver bracelet. The old woman took a few more glances at the bracelet. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up and he asked, Have you seen this bracelet before? Ha! The old woman was stunned for a moment before shaking her head. I've never seen it before. I just think this bracelet is quite unique. Gu Yundong was speechless. The corners of her mouth twitched. It was indeed quite unique. Gu Yundong was a little disappointed that this old woman had never seen it before. The old woman left quickly. Gu Yundong put the silver bracelet back on her wrist. Unexpectedly, when she looked up, she saw a group of maidservants not far away pointing at her. Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and looked at them coldly. Immediately, 2 maids did not dare to make a sound, but 2 of them looked at Gu Yundong provocatively. Gu Yundong frowned when she suddenly heard Qin Anning's angry voice. Sister Gu is not a servant of our family. Sister Gu is very capable. You're not allowed to speak ill of her. Gu Yundong looked over and saw that Qin Anning's face had indeed turned red. She pushed one of the young ladies unhappily. That little girl was the one who seemed to have a noble status. As expected, as soon as Anning pushed, one of the maids who had provoked Gu Yundong just now ran over quickly. Princess! She hugged the little girl and reached out to push Anning. Gu Yundong's pupils constricted. An adult's strength was different from a child's. Anning pushed the little girl and only made her retreat. This maidservant pushed Anning and was about to make her fall. Gu Yundong suddenly rushed forward and quickly supported Anning before she reached the end. She frowned at the maidservant. However, the maidservant looked at her young master tightly. Little princess, are you all right? Are you injured? After saying that, she looked up at Anning. What's wrong with you? If you want to talk, just talk. What right do you have to hit her? If our little princess is injured, can you bear the responsibility? Anning pursed her lips. After a moment of silence she said, It's my fault for pushing her. I apologize, but it's also wrong for her to hurt someone with her words. She has to apologize too. The servant girl was so angry that she laughed. Our little princess. Before she could finish speaking, the little girl in her arms stopped her. The young princess pushed the servant girl away and raised her chin arrogantly. I didn't say anything wrong. Why should I apologize? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1378. Gu Yundong is a country bumpkin. The young princess raised her head and looked at Gu Yundong again. Her eyes were filled with contempt. How powerful can a countrywoman like her be? She can't even compare to my maidservant. I don't know what Mrs. Qin is thinking. She actually brought such a bumpkin into the marquee mansion. How embarrassing. You! Qin Anning stomped her feet in anger. She's not a bumpkin. How is she not a bumpkin? Another young lady chimed in. Didn't you say just now? Her family is in that village. You even said that she brought you to the mountains and fields to catch cicadas with you. You even ate cicadas. Just thinking about it makes me feel disgusted. You also said that her younger brother didn't have the money to go to school in the past. Later, he finally started to learn with your father. I didn't mean that. Qin Anning looked at Gu Yundong anxiously. Yes, she was the one who said those words. However, she just wanted to tell these people that Sister Gu treated her very well and played with her. There were many interesting things in the village. It was clearly these people who asked her about her previous life in Fengkai County. Why did they say that Sister Gu was a bumpkin? Also, she just wanted to tell them that Yun Shu was very good at studying. He had only been in her father's school for a year, but he had already surpassed most of the students. He would be the top scholar in the future. These people deliberately misinterpreted her meaning. The young lady looked at Gu Yundong anxiously. She did not want her to misunderstand her. She did not want Sister Gu to hate her. Gu Yundong lowered her eyes and patted her head. She smiled and said, "I know. Don't be anxious." Anning's personality was a little like Madame Guess. Madame Gu was not good at arguing with others. Actually, this also meant that the mother and daughter were protected too well by Qin Wenzheng. Seeing that Gu Yundong did not misunderstand, Anning heaved a sigh of relief. When she looked up again, she faced the girls with her head held high. When the young princess saw this, she was immediately indignant. Especially a country bumpkin like Gu Yundong. She did not even look at her when she ran over, as if she looked down on her. She was extremely displeased. Pointing at Gu Yundong, she said, "Qin Anning even said that you're amazing. Do you know how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting? How many books have you read? Do you know how to write poems and settle accounts?" Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows. They thought these were impressive? Gu Yundong smiled. For some reason, the young princess in front of her felt a little terrified when she saw her smile. She was about to continue pressing when she heard Gu Yundong's cold voice. "You're asking me this? It means that you know everything, right?" The young princess snorted. "Of course. I've been studying since I was 3 years old. I know the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I also know how to memorize poems and calculate accounts. I've also read a lot of books." She was 6 years old this year and had studied for 3 years. She thought that her results were not bad. After all, even the headmaster praised her for being smart. Gu Yundong nodded slightly. "You've read a lot of books?" She seized this point and asked, "If that's the case, do you know the most basic knowledge?" Of course. The young princess felt an inexplicable panic. However, she was a dignified princess. How could she be afraid of a bumpkin? "Then let me ask you a few questions." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Just ask. Would she be stumped by an uneducated bumpkin?" What a joke. The other children also looked arrogant, but a few older girls frowned slightly. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1379. Gu Yundong's sharp questions. Gu Yundong thought that since they were so eager, she would not stand on ceremony. "Okay, then let me ask you. Why do horses sleep standing up? Why is it usually sunny in the morning when there's dew? Why is it colder when snow melts than when it falls? Why can't the oil that's on fire be put out with water?" The young princess widened her eyes. She did not know. But before she could answer, Gu Yundong's next questions followed. "When you hit a snake, you hit its weak spot. Where does the weak spot refer to? What is the most precious thing in the bird's nest? What's the use of a cat's whisker? What kind of plants bloom first and then grow leaves?" As soon as Gu Yundong finished speaking, there was silence. Everyone looked at her blankly. These questions were different from what they had imagined. None of them knew. The young princess was so anxious that she started to sweat. Her teacher had never taught her before, and there was no such thing in the books. How could she answer? She could only turn her head quietly and look at the maid behind her. The maidservant naturally did not know, but she did not want to show her ignorance in front of the young princess, so she immediately targeted Gu Yundong. The maidservant sneered and said, "You're quite nimble with your questions. Who can't ask these questions? But do you know the answers? You probably don't know and are specially using them to scare people, right?" The other maidservants immediately echoed, That's right. Do you know the answers? Why should you ask someone else for an answers you don't even know?" The older ones also nodded. "You must have asked randomly." No, she did not. Qin Anning immediately defended Gu Yundong and retorted, "My sister Gu definitely knows. She's very powerful." When the young princess heard the support of the people around her, her guilty conscience immediately disappeared. She also looked at Gu Yundong. "Tell me the answers if you have the ability." "Okay." Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Firstly, a horse has a big body and doesn't have sharp teeth or claws. If it lies down to sleep, once a ferocious beast attacks, it will be too late to defend or escape. Therefore, a horse has developed the habit of sleeping standing up to protect itself. Second, on a clear and cloudless night, the heat on the ground will dissipate quickly. the temperature in the field will decrease rapidly, and the ability to contain water vapor in the air will weaken. This way, the water vapor will condense on the grass, leaves, or rocks. Therefore, it's usually sunny in the morning when there's dew. 3. When the snow stops and the sky clears, there will be no clouds in the sky to block sunlight. The snow will begin to melt under the sunlight and absorb heat, so it will be colder when the snow melts. 4th, oil is lighter than water. When it burns, if you pour water into it, the water will immediately sink to the bottom of the oil. The oil will float up and flow out of the pot. Of course, the fire will burn brighter and brighter. It's best to immediately cover the pot to extinguish the oil pot fire. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, she looked at the girls in front of her who were blinking in shock. She suddenly felt that she was bullying them. She spoke faster. The 7 inches of a snake is the heart. The most precious bird's nest is the blood swallow. A cat's whisker is used to detect the width of the road. Plants like winter plums white jasper, and elm plums bloom first before growing leaves. Buying the shell and returning the pearl is a metaphor for people who only pay attention to the appearance of things and not their substance. She said the last sentence very meaningfully. As expected, the 2 older girls instantly understood what she meant and felt a little ashamed. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1380. Not the Lady Gu Yundong looked at the other young ladies, but she was so shocked by their sparkling eyes that she took a step back. What are you doing? You really know everything, the young princess said in disbelief. None of her teachers had ever told her that. Was this woman really a bumpkin? Standing at the side, Qin Anning puffed out her chest and said proudly, I told you long ago that my sister Gu is extremely capable, but you didn't believe me. Otherwise, if you have any questions, just ask my sister Gu and she'll be able to answer them. Gu Yundong was speechless. No, I am not. You are bragging too much. Seeing that the young princess had opened her mouth and was about to ask questions, Gu Yundong hurriedly wanted to stop her. Unexpectedly, a low laugh suddenly came from behind. Gu Yundong was stunned. She turned around and saw a few people suddenly walk out of the plum forest. The woman standing at the front looked to be in her 40s. She was slightly fat, but she looked kind. Behind her were 2 maidservants. Just as Gu Yundong was wondering who this person was, she heard the young ladies beside her say respectfully, Marquis Madam. Marquis Madam? Gu Yundong was stunned. Was this Marquis Huayan's wife? She stopped breathing and could not help but size her up. But then she frowned slightly. Back then, Liangzi had said that the couple carrying Shao Qingyuan were a beautiful couple who were tall. The marquise in front of her was a little plump and not very tall. However, one could still vaguely see her youthful beauty from her face. Was she the same person from back then? The lady was also sizing up Gu Yundong. She had actually come over earlier and was attracted by the young prince's voice. This flower appreciation banquet was organized by the heir's wife and the guests were all from the younger generation, and it was fine if she did not attend. However, as the wife of the head of the family, she should greet everyone when they arrived. However, she did not expect to hear the children arguing the moment she returned. The cause was the young woman in front of her. The lady wanted to go out, but she stopped when she heard this person's voice. Then, she heard the series of questions and answers. To be honest, it was really unexpected. The marquise thought that she had read a lot of books, but she could only answer a few of these questions. It was a very strange feeling. So this was how the knowledge that was closely related to them came about. The marquise became interested in Gu Yundong. No wonder Madame Gu brought her here. It seems that Madame Shao is also a well-read person. The marquise was the first to speak. Gu Yundong smiled. I just read some miscellaneous books. As she spoke, she raised her hand and brushed her hair, revealing the silver bracelet on her wrist. The silver bracelet was really eye-catching. As expected, the Marquis's gaze was fixed on it for 2 seconds. Gu Yundong observed her expression. Unfortunately, there was no fluctuation in her emotions. She could not help but feel a little disappointed. If Shao Qingyuan's background was really related to Marquis Huayin, then the people most likely to be his parents were the Marquis' wife or second madam. The marquise in front of him did not react to the silver bracelet at all. She did not look like Shao Qingyuan at all. It was very likely that it was not her. Then, what about the second madam? But just in case, Gu Yundong wanted to confirm it again. She took out a handkerchief from her sleeve and gently wiped the dirt off her fingers. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1381. Pleasing the handkerchief slid open, revealing the word Shao. However, the Marquise still did not have any reaction. She only said, "Mrs. Shao, you might have been here for a long time. Why don't you go in and have a cup of tea and snacks?" Then she said to the other children, "What about you? Do you want to rest for a while before playing?" Everyone looked at the young princess. The young princess nodded and then looked at Gu Yundong. Seeing that Gu Yundong was holding Qin Anning's hand, she frowned and ran to her right. She also grabbed her hand that was holding on to the handkerchief. "Gu Yundong. What are you doing? What happened?" The little princess blushed slightly. She did not look at Gu Yundong and deliberately said with a straight face, "Let's go." Gu Yundong looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "No, young princess, you were still calling me a bumpkin just now. Don't you feel uncomfortable holding my hand?" The young prefect was not upset, but Qin Anning was. She wanted her not to hold her hand. This was her sister Gu. However, looking at the Marquise in front of her, she did not say anything. She only secretly glared at the young princess. On the other hand, the Marquise covered her mouth and laughed softly. Others might not know, but she knew very well. The young princess was the daughter of the royal prince, Yi Xilan. Yi Xilan was an arrogant person, and her daughter was very doted on. In any case, with him as her father, no one could bully her. Therefore, the young prince's personality was a little free to do whatever she wanted. When she could not stand Gu Yundong, she would scold her. Now that she realized that Gu Yundong had something that she liked, she could not help but get closer to him. Others did not know if this personality was good or bad. The Marquise sighed as she walked into the hall. When she turned around, she found that the children had all followed her in. Gu Yundong, who was surrounded in the middle, actually felt like the king of children. The Marquise wanted to laugh for a moment. "Come sit." The Marquise got someone to serve tea and snacks for the children. She then asked Gu Yundong, "What kind of books does Mrs. Shao usually read?" Did this lady have to ask this? If she said that she only read storybooks, would she lead the children beside her astray? Hence, she took a sip of water and coughed lightly. "I read everything. Astronomy and geography, medical books on medicinal herbs, farms, forests, countryside, historical biographies. I read whatever I'm interested in." As she spoke, she felt a little guilty. She lowered her head and continued to drink her tea. The Marquise was surprised. "You really know a lot." When the other children heard this, they also tilted their heads and looked at her. So she knew so much because she had read so many books. However, they usually read poetry collections, scriptures, and memorized thousands of words. Thinking about it this way, their horizon seemed a little narrow. Gu Yundong saw that they were deep in thought and felt even more guilty. She quickly changed the topic, raised her head and said, "By the way, it's rare to see Madam today. Yundong boldly asks for a gift from Madam." The Marquise was stunned. Not only her, but the others present were also stunned. The servant girl beside the young princess secretly rolled her eyes. The country bumpkin was indeed unruly. It was her first time meeting the Marquise, and the Marquise had only chatted with her for a while out of respect for her, but she was actually taking advantage of her? Just wait. Just because the Marquise was easy to talk to didn't mean she didn't have a temper. As expected, the smile on the Marquis's face faded a little, but she still asked kindly, "What gift?" If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1382. She's so busy. Gu Yundong took out a piece of paper from his space. She handed the paper to the Marquise, who was stunned. She took it and looked at it. The drawing on the paper was very vivid, and there were some words on it. It looked a little strange. This is a flyer. It was the flyer for Xuanhe Prefecture's new tea pavilion. She had left a few behind when she was drawing them previously. She didn't have time to draw them in the capital, so she took one out and used it first. Fortunately, she tore off the piece with the address and date on it. I'm working with Auntie Qin to open a milk tea shop in the capital to entertain nobles like the marquise. The food and water in the shop are relatively new. I dare say that there's nothing similar in the capital. If the marquise is free, why don't you go and take a look? I'll be very interesting. The marquise looked surprised and lowered her head to look at the leaflet in her hand. Pearl milk tea, double-skinned milk, croissants, fries. What are these? Gu Yundong smiled mysteriously. It's delicious. Madam will know when she comes. The marquise smiled. You're still keeping it a secret. That's right. The shop hasn't opened yet. When the renovation is done, Madam should come over to take a look and you'll know what these are. When the time comes, bring old Madam, second Madam, and the heiress to experience it together. On the first day, there will be a half-price discount. The marquise was a little curious about something she had never heard or seen before. Especially since the flyer seemed to be very tempting. She did not go out often, but it was fine for her to go occasionally. Moreover, this was a collaboration between Gu Yundong and Mrs. Qin. Even if it was for the sake of the Gu family, it was fine to make a trip. However, it's fine with old Madam. She doesn't like to move now and doesn't like to join in the fun. His second aunt can go and take a look. I'll call her later. All right, then I'll send a post to Madam. Madam, you can't refuse. Of course not. Gu Yundong was slightly satisfied. Although she had not seen second Madam today, she would find an opportunity. Seeing that they were almost done talking, the young princess quickly said, I'll go too. You can also give me an invitation. Gu Yundong lowered her head and thought for a moment. She naturally felt that she could not let go of the opportunity in front of him. All right, but you need an elder to take care of you. No problem. I'll still ask my cousin to bring me. Today, the young princess came to the Marquis mansion because her cousin had brought her over. After Gu Yundong finished speaking, she saw that the Marquise looked a little tired. She quickly got up and bade farewell, taking the children with her. When she went out, she realized that Madame Gu was looking for her outside. Gu Yundong hurriedly led Qin Anning over. Unexpectedly, after taking a few steps, she realized that the young princess had also followed her. Gu Yundong was speechless. She stopped in her tracks and looked at the little girl strangely. Only then did the little princess react. She blushed and snorted. I just want to remind you not to forget to send it to me when the time comes. After a pause, she continued, I will also invite you. Tell me the address and I will treat you on my birthday. There's no need, right? A trace of fear flashed across Gu Yundong's face. She did not want to go to the Marquis mansion. That kind of place was restricted. She had to smile and bow when she saw someone. It was easy for something to happen, okay? Besides, she was actually very busy, really busy. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1383. What a coincidence. Seeing that she did not speak for a long time, the little princess became anxious. Why aren't you saying anything? Don't you want to come? Gu Yundong had a headache and could only say, Princess, you heard it just now. I'm opening a shop. Then I'm very busy. I might not have time. How busy can a shop be? Can't you just keep the door open? Gu Yundong was speechless. She wanted to cry. The corners of her mouth twitched and she said, Of course it's not that simple. Look, when I open a shop, I first have to renovate the shop and recruit workers. When the workers are found, I have to teach them how to work and entertain customers. Later, I have to get ready for the opening event, prepare ingredients, and attract customers. Sometimes, I have to deal with others who come to find trouble with me. Things are piling up. I'm really too busy. The little princess' eyes widened as she listened. So it's so complicated. You're amazing. You actually know everything. The young lady behind her also nodded in agreement. They had no choice. At first, they thought that opening a shop was very simple. After all, their shops were all managed by the shopkeepers. The little princess was a little disappointed, but seeing that Gu Yundong was so tired, it seemed a little unreasonable to send an invitation to her. She could only nod reluctantly. All right, then I won't invite you, but remember to invite me. All right. Gu Yundong nodded and agreed without hesitation. Only then did the little princess smile. However, the maid standing behind her rolled her eyes and lowered her eyes without saying anything. Gu Yundong stood up and brought Qin Anning to meet up with the Gu family. She followed Madame Gu to greet the other madams and young ladies. After staying in the Marquis mansion for a while, she stood up and left. After leaving the Marquis mansion, Madame Gu carried a Ning into the carriage and asked, "How is it?" Gu Yundong sighed and shook his head. The Marquise didn't seem to have any reaction when she saw the bracelet or the handkerchief. Madame Gu frowned. Could we have gone in the wrong direction? I've never heard of anyone losing a child in the Marquis mansion. I don't know either. It's just that this is the only clue at the moment. We can only look for it in the Marquis mansion first. If it's not relevant, we can look in other directions, Gu Yundong said. Let's try second madam another day. Madame Gu patted her hand. There's no hurry. We've waited for so many years. Now that we have a clue, we'll find it eventually. Okay. Gu Yundong nodded. Send Anning back first. I think she's a little sleepy. I'll wait for Brother Shao. All right, then I'll take my leave first. If there's anything, you can come to my residence to look for me. There's no need for any invitations. I'll tell the door guard. Okay. Madame Gu asked the maidservant to help her into the carriage. Gu Yundong and Tong Shui Tao watched their carriage get further and further away until it disappeared around the corner. Then she turned around. She did not know when Shao Qingyuan had appeared behind her, but what surprised Gu Yundong was that he was holding 2 boxes. Gu Yundong looked at the 2 boxes in confusion. This is... During the time you were in the Marquis mansion, I got 2 herbs. They were written in the medical book that Song Dejiang gave me. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. I've only been in the residence for a short while, and you've already gotten 2 precious herbs? Those were the herbs recorded in Song Dejiang's medical books. Shao Qingyuan handed the box to Shao Wen, who was leading the carriage over. He smiled and said, "It was just a coincidence." Wasn't that too much of a coincidence? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1384. Bad feeling. Gu Yundong remembered that in the medical book Song Dejiang had given her, there were about 50 kinds of precious herbs. In less than 2 years, Shao Qingyuan had already found more than 30 types. Gu Yundong felt that he might have a buff that attracted medicinal herbs. Otherwise, how could it be so easy for him to find a medicinal herb that others might not be able to find even after working hard for their entire lives? Perhaps he was born to walk the path of a medicinal herb merchant. Gu Yundong could not help but sigh. Shao Qingyuan helped her into the carriage. The carriage drove all the way to Hatai Alley. Gu Yundong took the opportunity to tell him everything that had happened in the Marquis mansion. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he was silent for a moment. He grabbed her hand and said, "It's fine. There's no hurry. It's only the first day." Yeah. As they spoke, the carriage entered the alley and stopped in front of the Shao family's house. Unexpectedly, just as the carriage stopped and before she could get out, the door of the house next door opened and Mrs. Yu ran over. "Is Sister Yundong back?" "Yes, sister-in-law. What's the matter?" Gu Yundong lifted the curtain and alighted from the carriage. Mrs. Yu had already run up to them and said in a hurry, "Io, where did you go? Why are you only back now? Let me tell you, when you left this morning, someone rushed over to look for you and said that he had something to tell you. There's no one here. I heard that they even went to your shop to look for you." Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan were stunned at the same time. They looked at each other and asked, "Sister-in-law Yu, did you ask who was looking for us?" "I asked. He said his surname is Song. You two know each other." "Song? Song Dejiang?" "You should know each other, right? He's a little old and so tall. He came in a carriage. He looked so anxious as if someone was going to die," Mrs. Yu said. "He asked me to wait for you to come back and tell you that it's an urgent matter." A bad feeling flashed across Shao Qingyuan's heart. "Let's go to the Song residence." Gu Yundong quickly turned to Mrs. Yu and said, "We understand. We'll go over and take a look now." "Thank you." With that, she got into the carriage with Shao Qingyuan. Shao 1, who was about to open the door and remove the threshold, locked it again and sat in the shaft with Tong Shui Tao. Mrs. Yu waved her hand and watched their carriage leave the alley. Gu Yundong did not know what had happened to Song Dejiang or why he was in such a hurry. Her intuition told her that it might have something to do with by Muzi. The carriage quickly stopped at the entrance of the Song residence. Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan alighted from the carriage and the concierge recognized Shao Qingyuan. He quickly went up to them. "Young Master Shao, you're here." "Yes, why is Imperial Physician Song looking for us?" The gatekeeper's eyes avoided them. He sighed and said, "You'll know when you come in." Then, he hurriedly led the way. Gu Yundong had not been to the Song residence before today. She had her own matters to attend to. It was her first time here today, but she did not have any curiosity for admiration. The two of them walked all the way to the central room before the same urgent footsteps came from inside. Then, Gu Yundong saw Song Dejiang, whose clothes were disheveled, whose hair was tangled, and whose head was covered in sweat. Song Dejiang was slightly stunned when he saw them. His fingers that were hanging by his side trembled slightly. Gu Yundong took a few steps forward. "Imperial Physician Song, what's wrong?" However, Song Dejiang was too ashamed to see their expressions. He raised his hand and wiped his face ruthlessly. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 1385. I used by Muzi then, Gu Yundong and Shao Qingyuan saw the blood on his face. "You?" Song Dejiang choked. "Yundong, I've let you down. What happened?" Song Dejiang raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot, and it was difficult for him to speak. After a long while he said with difficulty, "Bai Muzi is gone." Gu Yundong felt her head explode. He was stunned for a moment and could not help but take a step back. However, Shao Qingyuan suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Song Dejiang's clothes. "What do you mean? What do you mean by Muzi is gone?" Cough, cough. Song Dejiang coughed uncomfortably. The servant beside him hurriedly came up to grab Shao Qingyuan's hand. "Young Master Shao, calm down and listen to old master first." Shao Qingyuan pushed the servant away and stared at Song Dejiang sharply. "Tell me." Even though Song Dejiang was feeling a little uncomfortable, he still said, "My martial nephew's old illness had relapsed, and he needed Bai Muzi to save his life. I have no choice. I only had one stock with me, so I gave it to him to use first. I originally went to look for you to get your approval. Ahem, but you weren't around. My martial nephew couldn't wait any longer, so I could only..." Song Dejiang also felt very guilty. Other people's things were equally important to them. He had used them without permission, but he had no choice. He could not watch his martial nephew die just like that. He had no choice. Song Dejiang closed his eyes. "I know that I didn't do this right. I've let you down. If you want to beat or scold me, it's up to you. I'll accept it." Shao Qingyuan suddenly clenched his fists and raised them high in the next moment. The servant beside him hurriedly rushed forward to stop him. "Young Master Shao, don't be rash. Master is old. If you punch him, he will lose his life. Get lost." The servant did not dare to let go. Not only was young Master Shao strong, but he was also a martial artist. He turned his head and happened to see Gu Yundong. He hurriedly shouted, young Master Shao, look at your wife." At the mention of Gu Yundong, Shao Qingyuan finally calmed down. He let go of Song Dejiang and turned to see Gu Yundong lowering his head in a daze. Shao Qingyuan quickly hugged her. "Yundong, it's fine. If it's gone, well, look for it. We'll find it eventually." Gu Yundong's mind was in a mess. She had listened to Song Dejiang's words. However, she did not know what to do. It was not easy for her to obtain Bai Muzi. It had only been a few days, and he was gone just like that? Should he give Song Dejiang a beating? So what if he did? Bai Muzi would not be able to return. Gu Yundong had a headache. He frowned in pain and his face turned pale. Shao Qingyuan quickly picked her up and rushed to the guest room. Song Dejiang was still standing at the same spot. As he watched the two of them walk away, his legs seemed to be filled with lead and he could not move. His body was still in a mess and he looked very disheveled. Previously, when he was treating his martial nephew, He was also fully focused and did not dare to slack off at all, afraid that his martial nephew's life would be lost in his hands. Now, she actually felt her legs go weak and she slid to the ground. The servant at the side quickly supported him and sat him on a chair at the side. "Master." Song Dejiang waved his hand. "I'm fine." He pointed in the direction where Shao Qingyuan had left. "Follow them and see if they need anything." "Yes." After the servant left, Song Dejiang wiped his face again. The blood on his hand had already dried up, and his nose was filled with the smell of blood. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1386. Her mother has been waiting for a long time. Shao Qingyuan carried Gu Yundong and kicked open the door. After placing her on the bed, he frowned and looked at her worriedly. "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" "I'm fine. I just feel a little uncomfortable." Gu Yundong buried her head in his arms and said in a muffled voice, "Why is it gone? It wasn't easy for us to get by Muzi, but it's gone just like that." "It's okay. Well, look again." Gu Yundong hugged him tightly. "We've been searching for nearly 2 years. It wasn't easy to find such a stock. I don't know how many more years it will take to find it." Her mother had been waiting for a long time. Gu Yundong hugged Shao Qingyuan even tighter. "I really want to beat Song Dejiang up." "I'll beat him." After Shao Qingyuan finished speaking, he realized that Gu Yundong's grip on his waist had tightened. He sighed slightly and hugged her on his lap. "If it's really uncomfortable, cry. I'll be here. I'll watch over you." I am. Gu Yundong had always been strong and rarely cried. However, at this moment, she felt her eyes sting. It was very difficult to find that by Muzi. Shao Qingyuan almost gave up his life for this medicine. He almost became someone's slave. He ran away for a clue. He had put in a lot of effort. It was not easy for him to find by Muzi. In the future, he would not secretly take risks without telling her. But now, they were back to square one. Her mother still had to wait. She had just had some hope, but it was gone. "I'll write a letter later and ask my parents not to come." Her negative emotions reached their peak in an instant. Father and mother would be so disappointed. Shao Qingyuan took a deep breath and lowered his head to kiss her face. "I'll write it. They won't blame you." "Yes," Gu Yundong replied softly. Then, she closed her eyes and leaned into his arms without making another sound. Shao Qingyuan gently stroked her back until he felt her breathing gradually calm down. Then he hugged her and lay down. Seeing this, the servant at the door quietly closed the door. He exhaled and left quietly. When he returned to the main courtyard, Song Dejiang had already stood up. In the end, he went to wash his face, but his body was still messy. The servant reported, "Young Master Shao and Madam are resting in the guest room." Song Dejiang paused and nodded. "Get Shao Wan and the rest to come in too. Arrange for them in the room next door." Then, he went in to see his martial nephew. The guy was still unconscious, but his expression was slightly better. Song Dejiang sighed and asked the medicine boy to continue guarding the room while he returned to his room to rest. He had been tense since early in the morning. He was old, and after such a rescue, he felt like the world was spinning when he came back to his senses. However, he really could not fall asleep on the bed. It was not until the sky was about to darken that he slowly fell asleep. The next day, Song Dejiang woke up early. He went to see his martial nephew first, who was still unconscious. However, he took her pulse. Her pulse had stabilized and she was fine. Even his old illness had been treated, so it would not relapse. Song Dejiang heaved a sigh of relief. After seeing them, he went to the courtyard and asked the servants, "Where are Shao Qingyuan and the rest?" "They're not up yet." After hearing this, Song Dejiang was silent for a while. "I'm going to check on them," he said, and strode off toward the guest room. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible."